Good morning and welcome to council and staff and our viewing public. Today we are here at the Township of Lake Bay's Committee of Adjustment and Council virtual public meeting for September 28th. Please be aware that this meeting for the public is being recorded for the public record. All information provided is being collected pursuant to the Planning Act and will be used for the purpose of garnering your input, to respond to inquiries, and to be notified of future meetings, and is considered public information. I'm going to call upon, I believe, is it Emily or, oh, go ahead then, and we're going to do roll call first and get this parade started.
Good morning, everybody. Mayor Terry Glover.
Present.
Councillor Mike Pepard.
Present.
Councillor Robert Lacroix.
Present.
Councillor Nancy Tapley. Councillor Rick Brooks.
Present.
Councillor George Anderson.
Present.
Councillor Jacqueline Goddard.
Present.
Acting CAO Carrie Sykes. Looks like she hasn't joined the meeting yet. Director of Planning Services Melissa Markham.
Present.
Planning Technician Emily Thaler.
Present.
Planner April Best Serreras.
Present.
And Planning Technician Chloe Cochran, myself, present. And Director of Building and Bylaw Services Stephen Watson.
Present.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Good morning and welcome to everyone. I want to call the meeting to order, but before that, I'm going to do the land acknowledgement statement. We want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Their legacy and respectful stewardship for this land continues to shape Lake Bay today, and we want to show our respect. Centuries after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and actions. And I would be, of course, remiss not to mention the fact that we all raised a flag yesterday for the Truth and Reconciliation Week, and we'll be recognizing that all week long with a number of events, but certainly all of council, more or less. Poor George, he couldn't make it yesterday, but he's here today with a smiling face, joined us, and we did that, and there's going to be educational things put online and so on and so forth. So it's a very important week for us, so thank you very much for that. Now, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Moved by Councillor Brooks, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bay hereby approves the agenda of the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bay for the meeting of September 28th, 2021. Council for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you for that. Okay. Need a pile to start here and here. Someone took that other. Anyway, we're all good. Moved by Councillor Goddard, seconded by Councillor Pepard. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby constitutes itself for the purpose of hearing matters in accordance with the Planning Act, namely minor variances and consents. Council for the vote on that. All those in favor? And that's carried as well. Thank you. This morning, committee and council will be dealing with a variety of planning applications. Generally, the Planning Act requires that a public hearing be held before a committee and/or council make a decision on an application. The public hearing serves two purposes. First, to present the committee and/or council and the public the details and background to the proposed applications. Second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a decision is made. In this regard, I'd like to read the following statements. With respect to rezonings and/or site-specific amendments to the applicable bylaw, under section 34, subsection 12, the council shall ensure that sufficient information and material is made available to enable the public to understand generally the zoning proposal that is being considered by council. The staff report on each application is available on the township website, along with reports submitted in support of an application. Under section 34, subsection 14.5, council shall ensure that information is made available to the public regarding who is entitled to appeal. The applicant, a person or public body who, before the bylaws passed, made oral submission at a public meeting or written submission to the council or the minister may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal not later than 20 days after the day giving of notice is completed. If you wish to be notified of a decision of the council hearing for planning matters, you must make written request either by regular mail or email to the Township of Lake Bays, Dwight, Ontario, P0H1HO. Are there any additions to the agenda? No, and we've approved the agenda already. Okay. To this section here, I can put that one there. Council, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have, of course, our consent agenda. And the consent agenda has items listed under the agenda are considered routine and enacted in one motion. However, council may request one or more items be removed. So no one has requested anything and they'll be recorded separately in the minutes. So for the consent agenda, moved by Councillor Croy, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Whereas the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays reviewed the consent agenda consisting of various proposed resolutions, be resolved that the committee approve and adopt the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated September 28, 2021, excuse me, and excuse me, and direct staff to proceed with all the necessary administrative actions. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, and then moved by Councillor Tapley, seconded by Councillor Papard. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays hereby adopts the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment for the meeting of May 25th, 2021. Council, any questions with regards to the minutes? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to go, I believe. Yep, everybody's smiling here. First off, I've got B28-3021 LOB applicants Elisa Bowen and James Fraser Hurley, and this will be April. Good morning, April. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. So let's get started on the first case.
That's perfect. So today I'll be presenting on consent applications B28, 29, and 30-21 for the Bowen and Hurley property located on the north side of Dwight Beach Road. The purpose of these consent applications is to create 3 new parcels of land for future residential purposes, having frontage and access on Dwight Beach Road, a year-round maintained township road, with a small portion of frontage on Highway 60. The subject lands are currently zoned rural, which requires a minimum lot area of 25 acres with 500 feet of frontage on a year-round maintained road. The proposed severed lots would not meet these requirements. The applicant's agent has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to rezone severed lots 1, 2, and 3 to rural 1 to meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of this zone of 10 acres with 500 feet of frontage, and further to rezone the retained lot, which you can see outlined in green here, to rural residential, which requires a minimum lot area of 5 acres with 500 feet of frontage, as it would not meet the minimum lot area requirements of the rural or the rural 1 zones. Here are some photos of the subject lands. Essentially, this is Dwight Beach Road with the subject lands to the left here and to the right in that photo there. And just photos illustrating that they are vacant bush lots with undulating topography throughout. A portion of the subject property is zoned environmental protection to protect the Boeing Creek wetland. Section D53 of the official plan states that the exact boundaries of the provincially significant Boeing Creek wetland had been defined through a specific evaluation that was confirmed by the province. Section D62 of the official plan states that development and site alteration will not be permitted in provincially significant wetlands. Development or site alteration may only be permitted within 120 meters of a provincially significant wetland if a wetland impact assessment determines that there will be no negative impact on the natural features or ecological functions of that wetland. You can see here there's already the existing environmental protection zoning, which is in that hatched area of the property, and the subject lands outlined in blue here. To ensure continued protection of Boyne Creek provincially significant wetland, staff recommend that the environmental protection zoning around the environmental feature be expanded to include a 120-meter setback from the approximate boundary of the wetland, unless a wetland impact assessment is conducted which demonstrates no negative impacts. Furthermore, to ensure continued protection of the wetland, staff recommend that the site-specific zoning specify that access to future development on the lots be limited to Dwight Beach Road, essentially so there wouldn't be any site alteration or access through the wetland. So in regards to the first two consent applications, that's B28 and B29-21, staff are not opposed to the creation of severed lots 1 and 2. As you can see here in B28-21, the severed lot is outlined in red, retained in green, and furthermore, for the second consent application, B29-21, the severed lot is in red and the retained in green. So essentially, staff are not opposed to the creation of these lots and subsequent rezoning of these lots to a rural 1 zone, as proposed severed and retained lots appear to be appropriately configured. Therefore, as a condition of consent, staff recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment application be required to rezone the severed lands of these applications and result in retained lot to the rural 1 zone. In regards to the third consent application, B30-21 Lob, staff recommend this application, which proposes to further subdivide a 17.4 acre parcel into a 12.4 acre parcel and 5 acre parcel, be denied. Again, you can see here that the severed lot, that's that 12.4 acre parcel, and retained proposed is 5 acres in green. The result of this application being denied would be to reduce the total number of lots from 4 to 3, with the property that contains the Boyne Creek wetland and steep slopes being larger to further protect environmental features on the property. Staff is of the opinion that the creation of a total of 2 severed lots and 1 retained lot is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement and generally conforms to the district and township official plans, provided the severed retained lands be rezoned to address lot area, and that natural constraints are addressed through the recommended rezoning and future site plan agreements on the properties. Staff therefore has no concerns with the approval of consent applications B28 and 29-21 Lob, subject to the recommendations outlined in the report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, April, for your report. Council, questions for April? Councillor Papard.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. April, on the application that we're proposing that we deny with the really small retained lot, are there other development constraints on that retained lot, rocky outcrops or whatever? Would it be a developable lot or not? It looks really narrow and etc.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So essentially, as I had stated earlier, there is some steep slopes on the property, and it does look like that there are sections on that property that does contain some undulating slopes. So that is something that would need to be addressed through, if it was approved through a site plan agreement, we need to appropriately cite that to make sure that it is an appropriate area to develop.
Any further questions, Council, for April at this time? Councillor Anderson, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Glover. April, just the 120-meter setback from the actual wetland. Sorry, is that from the edge of the wetland back in or from the center of the wetland? How does that determine?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be from the approximate boundary of the wetland. Hopefully that answers your question, yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Not seeing any, so we'll bring forward the agent. Is it Graham? Are you? Oh, he's here.
I'm here. I'm here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. Good morning, Graham, and welcome. Could you give us your name and address for the record, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of committee. My name is Graham Huizinga with Wayne Simpson and Associates Land Use Planners in Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 1E4, 76 King William Street. I'd like to thank staff for their attention to this file and for preparing the staff report. I think the focus of what I'll be speaking to today, as well as the property owner, Alyssa Bowen, who's here and probably wants to add something as well after I'm concluded here, will probably be with the focus on the 5 acre smaller lot. And I would note to Councillor Papard's question previously, although it looks small on paper, that portion of the lot next to the road is actually over 250 feet wide. So I do think that there's plenty of opportunity there to site a typical rural residential development of, a septic system and a dwelling and, accessory structures and things like that. And as April mentioned, if approved, that can be dealt with at the time that the lot is ready to be developed through a site plan agreement. So, but from walking it briefly, I mean, I'm no expert, but I do think it's possible to build on for sure. This lot that we're focused on here, the 5-acre lot that would be rezoned rural residential, has over 600 feet of frontage on the existing township road. From walking the boundary of the property, it seems like it's got ample opportunity for a safe access. I believe the speed limit of Dwight Beach Road in this area is 50. And there's a nice straightaway section right in the middle of this lot that's fairly flat and goes right into the bush lot and would have no problems as far as I can tell from providing access. As far as the size of the lot, I believe 5 acres is appropriate for the requested use, which again is a rural residential zone. So that really limits the amount of uses on the property. And kind of the intention, of course, with the rural residential zone, as the name implies, is that it would be a residential use in a rural setting. So you're not going to have, larger scale or larger intensity uses such as agricultural uses or anything like that on this property. As April mentioned, the consents are going to be conditional on rezoned property, which would rezone this lot to the rural residential zone. I understand that staff raised concerns with the proximity of the development to the Boeing Creek wetland. I would note that the majority of the provincially evaluated significant wetland for Boeing Creek is actually northwest of this property and north of Highway 60. But of course, the creek does continue through Highway 60 through a culvert and then through the subject lands before outletting into Lake of Bays a little closer to the current limit of the village of Dwight. So we have no concerns with expanding the environmental protection zone to the 394-foot limit or 120-meter limit that the PPS recommends for kind of an abundance of caution approach if you're not willing to undertake a further wetland evaluation, which, as April mentioned, this feature has already been evaluated by the province and the limits have been set out through that process. So, unfortunately, I don't have a visual depiction to show you, but the 394-foot setback from the limit of this wetland feature as it's been evaluated still doesn't even touch the limit of this 5-acre lot and leaves about 6.5 acres developable on severed lot 3, which would be the larger rural 1 lot that would be closer to the wetland. So that would be the one that would be more impacted. But again, there'd be over 6 acres of land that would be free and clear for development there anyway. And in my experience, I don't think anyone would really be running an access road or a driveway for a typical rural development over 500 feet into the bush to build way up closer to the wetland. I think they would probably be concentrated a little closer to the roadway. There was also concern raised by staff respecting the character of the area. I would note that there's quite a few rural residential sized or use lots in the area, both to the southeast, kind of at the corner where Dwight Beach Road and Charlie Thompson Road split off, as well as to the northwest, right before Dwight Beach Road turns out into Highway 60. There's also some established rural residential lots there. Interestingly, my client did bring up that there was another consent that they were made aware of recently that was approved by council in May on Crosswinds Cove Road, just to the south of the subject lands, wherein there is a natural severance to that property, similar to this one, where a road runs between 2 chunks of a property, but they had been tied together for planning purposes. And in that case, that was bylaw 2021-037. This smaller parcel of a little less than 5 acres was approved by council to be extricated from that. So in effect, a severance. And it seems that that lot is similar in character and size to the one that we're proposing here. And it sounds from what my client is saying that the lot we're proposing here is actually a much better building envelope than what we've got on this Crosswinds Cove proposal. So I'd just like to bring that to council's attention as well. So it's not out of the question for council to approve lots of this size in this area. We've got a very recent example of council doing so. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposal, and I believe Alyssa is on the call as well and has a little bit to add to the proposal as well. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for that, Alyssa. And I believe is it James?
Jamie.
Correct, Jamie.
Yeah, good morning. If you could identify yourselves for the record, name and address, and then go ahead with your side of the story.
Good morning. My name is Alyssa Bowen,
I'm Jamie Hurley.
and our address is 1283 Dwight Beach Road. Okay, thank you for letting us address this issue this morning. I'm just going to read a prepared statement, and we have some supporting documents just to sort of hold up. So if you're having trouble seeing them, you could let us know. And I'll get started. So my name is Alyssa Bowen, and I live on Dwight Beach Road with my partner, Jamie Hurley, and our 10-year-old son who attends Irwin Memorial School. I am lucky enough to have moved to South Portage Road when I was 4 years old and to have lived or cottaged in Lake of Bays Township for a good portion of my life. Jamie has also lived on Lake of Bays and has a long history of family visiting and cottaging in this area. As someone who has had the privilege of most of a lifetime of enjoyment in Dwight, and as a realtor working locally, I am very aware of the allure of the area, its natural beauty, and amazing offerings to live, work, and play. We moved from Dwight to Dorset 10 years ago and then purchased the subject land in 2016 as we realized Dwight was where we wanted to be. I am also fortunate to have my mom and two of my siblings within walking distance of our home, and we are all here for a reason and by choice as we understand what a great place it is to call home. Jamie and I have built a new home on the southern portion of our acreage, and part of our long-term plan was to create lots on the north portion. The timing is right for us, and with the demand for land in this area currently, we have applied to sever that portion into 4 lots, for which we understand we have sufficient acreage and sufficient road frontage. We have read the staff recommendation report and are pleased and grateful to see a portion of our application is being supported, namely the creation of 2 lots plus 1 retained lot. However, like Graham, our planner, we believe there is a case to support the total of 4 lots we've applied for and would like to respond to the staff's reasons for denial of the 5-acre retained lot, which would be lot 4. We've read over the official plan in detail, and I was a member of the official plan review advisory committee in 2015 as well. We understand that the development of new rural lots must adhere to the intent, principles, and policies of the official plan, and they must be compatible with the existing area's development and in an area where rural development exists. We believe this to be the case. Regarding the staff report conclusions for denying the 4th lot, rezoning to rural residential would be required, and this has been deemed to not conform as it does not preserve the rural lot standards in the fringe outside of the community of Dwight, and may result in additional disturbance on the subject lands containing environmental constraints, namely the Boeing Creek provincially significant wetland. We note there are currently 18 rural RR zoned lots within close proximity to us, highlighted here in orange, including 5 lots which directly abut the Boeing Creek, and 4 of which are on our portion of Dwight Beach Road. Therefore, we believe rezoning to RR does conform to nearby lots. Secondly, lot configuration does not conform in that it contains Boyne Creek significant wetland to the north, steep slopes not of size and dimension to address these constraints, and further that the configuration is not appropriate and in character with the area. We have spent the past years exploring our acreage and are very familiar with its varied terrain, some of which is sloping and steep, and much of which is level to rolling terrain, which you could see in the photos in the staff report. The proposed 5-acre lot has a large frontage of over 600 feet, almost all of which is completely level. It has an ideal building envelope that is almost 600 feet away from the Boyne Creek, far enough in from the road to maintain the forested character of the area, and is level to very gently sloping at most, as can be seen on the contour lines on the Muskoka GeoHub topo map. Both the 12.4 acre lot 3 and the 5-acre lot 4 offer many hundreds of feet of prime development area, hundreds of feet away from the Boyne Creek area. Concerns with steep slopes, as per the official plan, appear to be related to the possibility of unstable slopes and soil, where development may occur on the slopes. All of the proposed lots are large enough to develop around the steep rocky areas, which will simply form beautiful backdrops for the future developments. With regards to configuration, when we first approached the township, the 5-acre lot was configured as a triangle to gain enough road frontage for each of the lots. The township let us know they did not support the triangular shape of the lot, and we have since reconfigured the lot in a more rectangular shape to fit into the area as best it can, given the large curve in the existing road. The township has subsequently approved several nearby lots, which are triangular, and we feel that our proposed lot is in keeping with the random and varied shapes and sizes of lots in this area. We understand the importance of these proposed lots being compatible with the area. The official plans mandate to create a variety of lot sizes to address rural character and to support growth of the community. Dwight Beach Road is a township-maintained road with very little development currently, but which is being maintained year-round and is also a school bus route. There are currently 13 lots on the portion of the road between Charlie Thompson and South Portage Roads. 8 of these properties are 5 acres or less, with the smallest being 1/3 of an acre. That is 8 of the 13 lots on this portion of the road, 2 of which are being built on currently. There are also several nearby lots on Charlie Thompson Road, some of which abut our land, which range from 1.1 acres to 5.1 acres, and including a 4-acre lot, which was approved this year, which Graham just mentioned, and which is incredibly steep and triangular in shape. We believe the 3 12-acre lots and the 1 5-acre lot are compatible with what is nearby, larger than most, and will add interesting character to the area. I am also aware as a realtor that demand for land has grown exponentially during COVID, and that a 5-acre lot is considered by most to be a large lot, highly desirable to build on while maintaining several acres to enjoy the rural lifestyle. The creation of the additional 5-acre lot will bring much needed inventory to the available land resources needed to support the new growth in our area, will bring increased revenues to the tax base, the local businesses, and if we are lucky, even new pupils to our local school. We love it here. We love seeing our area thrive and be carefully developed to allow for growth while maintaining the character we all love. We feel that this acreage supports 4 nicely sized lots, which will add to and complement the area and which are large enough to develop with site plans that will maintain their natural beauty without jeopardizing any environmental constraints and are fully in keeping with the intent, principles, and policies of the official plan. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. Council, questions for either the agent or our guests? Councillor LaCroix, we'll start off with you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually for April. When I read the report, April, I just got the understanding that we wanted all these lots to be zoned RU. I didn't realize that there were other RR in the area. Is the reason that we're not looking at allowing the development on these 2 separate little lots, or the 2 lots, is it because of the zoning, or is it because of the protection of the wetlands?
April?
Do you, Mr. Chair? So yes, you are correct. The 3 properties that are severed would be rural 1, which is the 10-acre requirement, and then the 1 retained lot is proposed to be rural residential, which is 5 acres. Unable to speak about the other rural residential potentially in the area. Those could have been historical lots or whatever that may be. But essentially, the staff report does outline the environmental features that are on the property, and one of them being the provincially significant wetland, and just really retaining that larger parcel to ensure continued protection of that, as well as steep slopes on the property. Essentially, that does speak to that. And hopefully that answers some of your questions in that regard. But essentially, it would be a lot line configuration as well. As you can see with the retained lot, it is a differently configured property. So that was also spoken about in the staff report as reasoning for the denial of that 3rd application.
Go ahead, Councillor LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up then, if the Boeing Creek wasn't there, would the RR rezoning be allowed? I'm just trying to figure out whether or not it's just all to do with the wetlands.
Through you, Mr. Chair. You know, everything's site specific in terms of whether rural residential would be appropriate. Right now it is zoned rural, which would require 25 acres. So you do need the rezoning to go from the 25 acres down to the 5 acres for that retained parcel. But largely, I would say that the staff report does outline concerns in terms of the environmental constraints and just continued protection of that, and then also the lot line configuration of that retained lot.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a challenge unmuting there. Question back to April. Just a clarification from this, from the distance from the environmental protection. You say goes from the edge of it or from the center line of it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the edge of it.
Okay. So I'm still struggling with why we are not interested in approving the 5 acre parcel. I see when I look at the property, it is extremely flat along the roadway. There's plenty of area for a house to be built with a septic system. I don't see them going into that sliver that goes up very close to the Boeing Creek as far as development. It's too small to develop it up there anyway. It would be, I'm sure it would be just left in a natural state. And as you get up into that section now, you really start to me, you're kind of compromising lot 3, even by saying it has to be that set distance from the edge of the environmental protection. So I think lot 4 is actually probably more conducive to development than lot 3 if you use that as a parameter. So I'm struggling with why we cannot develop on the retained lot, which they would like to call lot 4.
Okay, April, did you want to comment or no? Just move along. Is that the idea? I see a no. Okay, Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. April, where is the boundary of Dwight currently in relation to these lots? Because Dwight, as a community, allows much smaller lots, and you get out of the township, out of the town designation, and you go to bigger lots.
April?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I can share my screen and just give you a quick kind of where the boundary is. It is just kind of southeast of the subject lands. So the subject lands are up here, so you can see outlined in outlined in blue, and then the boundary here of Dwight. So that is correct. Typically in the community, they are smaller zones, but in the rural area, it is about protecting large lots. The provincial policy statement and the official plan speak to protecting kind of the larger lot sizes in frontages.
Okay, further questions, Council? Councillor Croy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Brooks, I'm having trouble concerning why we couldn't allow the 2 lots. I'm not even that concerned with lot 4. It would be lot 3. If we were to, like, it's 12.5 acres, and if we were to restrict all development within the first, say, 300 or 400 feet of Dwight Beach Road, that would still leave them like 1,500 feet before the creek. So I'm not sure how we're protecting the creek when they're going to be so far away. Like, I know the provincial standard is 400 feet. That lot's got to be, since it's almost a full lot, it's probably got to be 2,000 feet from the creek. So if they were restricted to the front of the road, wouldn't that be a lot of enough protection for any creek enhancement?
April?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a map with the exact dimensions of that, but essentially, like we had said before, that was one element that was part of the staff report, as well as the protection of the rural lot sizes and as well as the configuration. But Graham has his hand up, so I'm sure he can speak to that.
Graham, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, April, for keeping your eye out. The depth of severed lot 3 from the road is going to be about 1,250 to 1,300 feet. So even if we do a 394-foot setback from the creek, or the limit of the wetland, rather, not even the creek, I think, as Councillor LaCroix mentioned, you're going to have several hundred feet in from the road that's not going to be affected by even this, extremely generous EP zone. And I've spoken with Alyssa and James about this, and they seem to think that it's not going to impact the saleability of the lot because, again, as we've been speaking about, basically the first 5 acres of this lot, severed lot 3, in from Dwight Beach Road, is going to be where you develop anyway. I mean, I can't imagine that someone would want to situate their dwelling 800 plus feet into the bush on a lot like this. It's just too much of an endeavor. So. Yeah, I think that's where we were heading with our rationale for why both of these lots make sense.
Okay, Alyssa, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Tapley because I had also looked at where the community designation ended versus where we are, and we're not far, but between and they do go to larger lots typically, but between just down the hill, Buttermilk Hill, where it ends, and us, there are actually 5 lots that are, the largest is 4.99 acres. There's a 0.6, a 2.09, a 0.3 of an acre. There are several lots between the community and us that, are in support of the lot sizes we're proposing here.
And the newly created.
If that helps Councillor Tapley understand, where we are versus the community and sizing.
Okay, thank you for that. April, I'm trying to. George, did you have a question, or were you just? Yeah, go ahead, George.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mayor. I'm struggling with this, as we all are, but I'm with Councillor LaCroix in that if we're far enough away from the wetland, then what we're, in my opinion, what we seem to be really striving to do is protect the wetland, which I'm absolutely for, of course. And it seems that to me, that in the lot 3, there would be ample room to find a building site. And so I'm certainly struggling with why we can't go with all that the applicant has proposed.
Yeah, April, is there something we can put in place that would allow this type of movement? I'm seeing lots of nods from council. I kind of know, but you go ahead. Is there something we can put in place that would allow what the proposal is asking to allow it to go forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if committee would like to approve all 3 applications, we can bring 3 provisional decisions for committee for approval. Is that kind of, you're just wondering in terms of process, right?
I believe so, yeah. So this would allow what the client is proposing to go forward, is what you're saying?
That's correct. Okay,
so how does, go ahead, Councillor Papard.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't sure which way you're going with the question, so maybe I'll ask. April, can we insist on a building envelope for all 4 lots if we approve all 4 lots?
Through you, Mr. Chair, are you meaning through a site plan agreement or through the consent itself?
Either one.
Okay. Through you. Yeah, sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, we can essentially just require that through the site plan agreement that they show the precise, that is typically the requirement that they show the precise building envelope. If you would like anything more than that, it would essentially be through the rezoning. But typically site plan agreement is something that encapsulates that. But again, we can put that to the agent and the owner as to how they would like that addressed in terms of building envelopes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to the agent or the owner now, I think, to get, Graham, can you comment on that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think the owners would have any problem with condition of site plan agreement. My only question then to staff maybe would be if it's a condition of consent, if the current owners are not planning on developing the lots themselves, I just want to make sure that we're not going to run into an issue with finalizing the conditions. within the 1 year that you're permitted. So maybe
Okay,
that's
and
just a question to staff, if I may.
thank you. Who wants to take that? April, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just go to the provisional decisions, the condition that speaks to that. And it really speaks to the severed and retained lands being rezoned appropriately, which you'd already submitted the applications for. And through that rezoning, it would require a site plan agreement prior to any vegetation removal or site alteration, just to ensure vegetation retention and everything and the building envelope and everything like that. So it would be a condition, or it would be essentially encapsulated in the zoning upon the development of the property.
Through the zoning. Okay, perfect. Thank you, April.
So that works for you, Graham, is what you're saying.
That works for me. If that works for the owners, that's the most important part.
Okay.
Does.
Okay, it does.
Thank you.
So any other questions, council? Is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. A question back to April, based on what we've just heard, the interchange between yourself and Graham, with these conditions that would go, with these conditions, then what am I trying to say here? The footprint of where the house could go and all the ancillary things. If this property is not going to be developed for maybe 2 or 3 years, it may change over to a different ownership. So are these things made very clear to purchasers that we have conditions as to where they can build, where their septic system goes, driveway entrances, things like that? So all of those things, just for clarification, those are identified so a potential purchaser knows.
That's a good question. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. In April, it's pretty clear, right? Are the protections in place should the ownership change? And of course, it's, going up for sale, so on and so forth. Is this keep it safe, or where are we with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So essentially it would be encapsulated, like I said, in the zoning. So that is a public document. So anybody who would be purchasing a property would hopefully do their due diligence and check the zoning of the property. And that's very clear that it would require the site plan agreement as well as protection of all the environmental features on the property. We can always, just because we are going to be bringing forward potentially a third provisional decision, perhaps Melissa or the mayor would read that out. And then if council has anything else to add, we can make sure it gets added at this meeting.
Well, I love reading, so sure, whatever you like. Just tell me what you'd like me to do. Council, can I get a kind of a feel for where we're headed? Is anybody else want to make quick comment? Not seeing any. So, and I did ask if anyone from the public wished to speak to this file. Did you get anyone? No, nobody's responded. So it's looking like, okay. Are you going to go? Oh, good. Hi, Melissa. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. All I wanted to add to this is just before the mayor reads the decision that you have before you, Graham and the owners, the one thing that's been added to this provisional decision, as it has been drafted here by staff, is one additional condition that the retained lands be zoned from RU to RR, which is rural residential, with an exception to require a site plan agreement or similar municipal agreement to be entered into to ensure that vegetation in areas outside of the building, septic, and road envelopes be preserved in order to address section D130 and to ensure development will be located and occur in such a way that vegetation required for shelter and food is substantially preserved, and further to retain a vegetative buffer of at least 6 meters in depth along 75% of the front lot line abutting the road. So that is the additional condition that was added to this property if it did go forward today. So they can be read aloud. Unfortunately, through Zoom, it's hard to share these documents, but we do have that. That is the only condition that's been added to this. So if you are okay with that, we can just move ahead. However, if you do want the mayor to read those out, he could read them in totality. But
no, if you, I'm just kidding. If you want me to read it, I'll read it. So can we get approval? How are we doing? Alyssa, are you cool with that? Does that sound like the way to go?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out, Jamie. I just.
That's okay.
I'm careful. My wife would give me a look right now. So I'm gonna, what am I gonna read here? The whole giant, no, the provisional I'm gonna leave here because I got a kind of a smile there. Just this and all this. Just the front sheet. Oh, okay. I just got handled something thicker than the Bible. So just hang on one second. I think we're just making a little change to save me some reading. So just hang on one. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So just this one. Okay, beautiful. Moved by Councillor Goddard, seconded by Councillor Popard. Whereas the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of the Town Chippewa Bays hereby receives a staff report, consent application B28-30-21 LOB Bowen and Hurley, 1283 Dwight Beach Road, roll number 010-008-09500, dated September 28, 21. And whereas the applicants have submitted consent applications B28-30-21 LOB in order to create 3 new parcels of land for future residential purposes, having frontage and access on Dwight Beach Road, a year-round maintained township road with a small portion of frontage on Highway 60. Be it resolved that consent applications B28-21 LOB, B29-21 LOB, and B30-21 LOB Bowen and Hurley be approved, subject to the provisional decision attached to the staff report as Appendix B, and read aloud at the committee meeting on September 28, 2021. Right? Oh, I'm going to initial that. Okay. All those in favor? And I see that's carried. So thank you very much. Thank you, folks, for joining us this morning, and have yourself a pleasant day.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. I have B21-22-21 LOB applicant Sunset Rock Inc. And I have April. April, good morning again and welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen here. So today I'll be presenting on consent applications B21 and 22-21 LOB for the Sunset Rock Inc. lands located on Dwight Beach Road. As Council will recall, these lands were subject to previous consent applications B04, 05, and 06-20 LOB to create 3 new community residential lots having frontage and access on Dwight Beach Road, whereby provisional decisions for the applications were endorsed by the Director of Planning Services on September 28th of 2020. Furthermore, these lands were rezoned as a condition of these consent applications by Bylaw 2020-108 that was passed at the March 31st, 2021 Council Planning Matters meeting. The site-specific zoning protects the watercourses as well as a steep cliff feature identified on the lands. The purpose of the current consent applications is to create 2 additional residential lots within the community of Dwight, which comply with the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Just as a refresher of the subject lands for committee today. So essentially this is the northern portion of the property that essentially leads to a large cliff feature that was identified and protected through the previous consent applications and subsequent rezoning. And these are the water courses that were identified on the southern lands. And again, I'll speak more to this in my presentation. So as for the first application, B21-21 LOB, this application proposes to create 1 severed lot, being approximately 2 acres in lot area with 470 feet of road frontage on Dwight Beach Road, with the retained lot to be approximately 75 acres in lot area with approximately 198 feet of road frontage on Dwight Beach Road. Both the severed and retained lands would meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the community residential zone. As indicated through the previous applications, a permanent watercourse and intermittent watercourse have been identified on the subject lands, whereby the boundaries between the severed and retained lands are proposed to bisect the top of bank of both the permanent and intermittent watercourse. You can see this here where the proposed severed lot boundaries are. That is, again, the top of bank of those 2 watercourses identified on the property. In order to protect the watercourses, staff are of the opinion that further subdividing these lands through this application would not be appropriate, and that in order to protect the watercourses, the whole of the watercourses, including the top of bank and applicable setbacks, should remain on a single lot so as not to divide the natural feature between the severed and retained lands by maintaining the existing lot frontage and configuration that was created as a result of the previous consent applications. Overall, staff have the opinion that the proposed lot dimensions and lot line configuration of this application does not appropriately address the environmental concerns or development constraints identified on the property, that the application does not appear to be in conformity with sections G24, J48, and D118 of the Township Official Plan, that the lot dimensions and configuration does not appropriately address the environmental constraints and does not conserve the natural features and does not represent good planning. Therefore, staff recommend that this application be denied. As for the second application, B22-21 Lob, this application proposes to create one severed lot, being approximately 2 acres in lot area with approximately 215 feet of road frontage on Dwight Beach Road, with the retained lot to be about 2.89 acres in lot area with 198 feet of road frontage on Dwight Beach Road. Both the severed and retained lands would meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the community residential zone. As outlined previously, the subject lands contain topographic constraints which have been addressed through the site-specific bylaw, the Section 5126 agreement that is registered on title, and the subsequent site plan agreements, which are required prior to development of the properties. No changes to these previous approvals are proposed. However, the Section 5126 agreement will need to be amended to amend the legal descriptions of the lands. As this application is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement and generally conforms to the district and township official plans, staff has no concerns with the approval of this application, subject to recommendations outlined in the report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Questions, Council? I see Councillor Papart. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. April, so this is another one of these. We have 2 choices applications, correct? We can look at potentially approving the severance with the smaller 2-acre lot, which is not considered a good idea by staff, or we can look at the most northerly proposed lot being further severed. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember how this came to council the last time and what we approved there.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So previously it was the creation of 3 severed lot and 1 retained. And now these 2 applications is further subdividing the first severed lot of the previous applications, as well as further subdividing the retained lands from the previous applications. So okay, quite a bit of...
The further subdividing the retained lands is the ones that we're appearing to have some issue with because they're severing the top of bank.
That's correct.
And by severing top of bank, basically you've got a creek on one side, a creek on the other, and the high point of land in between. And they're proposing a building lot on that high point of land in between, which essentially drains both directions to one seasonal creek and one cold water stream, correct?
That is correct.
So it could have an impact on both water courses. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I think it was good comments, Councillor Papart. Thank you. Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Through you to April. The map you had out for the second set of severances, the line on that is really strange. The top boundary line is really strange. Is that following a top of bank, or what is that following?
Perhaps we could throw it up.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe you're speaking to this particular.
Yes, that line.
So that is actually the boundary of the property. So the entire property was identified previously, and this was already the boundary between this subject lands and then lands that are owned by other applicants.
Really strange line. Okay.
Yes, okay. We're not making any changes to that boundary. But.
Okay, Council, questions? I'm going to say I'm not seeing any hands. I see John Gallagher there. Good morning, sir. How are you? Please identify yourself for the record and go ahead.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of committee. John P. Gallagher, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9. I'm here representing Sunset on the proposed severances today. I think April has explained the application quite well, and I'll start my discussion with B22. Staff in their report are recommending approval of the application and state that the application conforms to the district local official plan and is consistent with the PPS. They have provided a recommendation for approval attached to your agenda. My client fully supports the recommendations of the approval of that application, would ask the committee to approve that application today, as staff had no issue with it. With regards to B21, My client has reviewed the application and he respectfully requests a deferral of that application as he wants to rethink that application. So he would have no objection to deferral of that application. We understand there's some unresolved issues and he would like to deal with that at a later date. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you for that, Mr. Gallagher, and that we'll get our people hopping here for a second while we sort through that. Any other questions, council? Any for Mr. Gallagher? Not seeing any. Is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this? Not seeing any hands. Okay, so no further questions, council? Councilor Croy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one on the deferral. Is there a time limit for deferral? Like, are we looking at a few months? Could it be a year? What's the limit? Or is there one?
Okay, April's ready to go there. She can't wait to answer this one. Go ahead, April.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Typically with a deferral, there would not be a time limit imposed on when they bring an application back. Unless Melissa has anything else to add, that's typically the...
Okay, everybody wants to answer. Melissa, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I can comment on is typically there would be a non-decision on applications where council or committee has not made a decision on a Planning Act application within a certain time frame. However, as this is at the request of the applicant and that will be reflected in the resolution, I don't believe that they would be appealing a non-decision in this matter, but there is no time frame currently on any application that we have that's been deferred.
Councilor Papard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Melissa, there wasn't a deferral on this previously? Like, wasn't the applicant given more time to look at the lot between the two creeks or that area? Maybe I'm confusing it with the north side of Dwight Beach Road.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what we've done in this instance is April was correct in how the lots were created in the first place. As a condition of the original consents for the lot configuration you see here today, that actually went through as a staff delegated authority. It was the zoning amendment that came forward to zone the properties where that retained portion that Mr. Gallagher is asking here today to be deferred, that came back because at that time the applicant had requested, while staff had included that area within the EP zone at that time as well, the applicant had requested that that be removed, that further investigation be done by their consultant to allow development to occur. So that would be outside of the EP area. So that is probably what you're referring to is the zoning application for the original consent applications that are now further being subdivided.
And was that work done by the applicant to demonstrate reasons for removing it from the EP zoning?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the report came back that there could be a development envelope cited in between those water courses. So that is the zoning that's in effect with that development envelope shown in the sketches that April had included in her report here today.
And we disagree, staff disagree with that because?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those zonings have actually been approved. That is in place for development on that. So that zoning amendment application was dealt with. Unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what meeting that went to, but yes, the zoning amendment is in effect on the lands at this time with the building envelope shown in the location that April had in her report today.
Okay, supplementary if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm getting a little confused because it looked like we're recommending no development there, but a building envelope has been determined, or that was by the applicant, not by us. I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to decide here today and whether to defer or not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what we have here today is the consent application. So the zoning has been approved in between the water courses where that building envelope is shown, outlined in red on the staff report. That is being proposed today to be an additional lot. So that would be severed from that larger portion, the large portion that goes down to almost the extension of Sail Road. So this area in between the water courses, that is proposed to be severed from that larger portion, whereas right now it is all one lot. if that clarifies what you're looking at here today.
It does. One more supplementary, sorry to beat this to death. So if it was all maintained as one lot, it's technically allowable to build, but if it was severed off, it's not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, that is not what this application is.
Okay, sorry, I'm just confusing things. All right, I will just sit and listen. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to this? Seeing none, we've asked the public. Okay, so in front of me, I have, and do I read the provisional decision? No? Good, thank you. Moved by Councillor Goddard, seconded by Councillor Papard. Whereas the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of Township of Lake Bays hereby receives the staff report, consent applications B21 and 22-21, LOB Sunset Rock Inc., Dwight Beach Road, vacant land, roll number 010-011-06800, south side of Dwight Beach Road, dated September 28th, 2021. And whereas the applicant has submitted consent applications B21 and 22-21, LOB in order to create 2 new parcels of land for future residential purposes having frontage and access on Dwight Beach Road, a year-round maintained township road. Be it resolved that consent applications B21-21 LOB Sunset Rock Inc. be deferred at the request of the applicant. And further, that consent application B22-21 LOB Sunset Rock Inc. be approved, subject to the provisional decision attached to the staff report as Appendix B. Council, for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Okay, moving along, I am at B18-20 LOB applicants Catherine and Fred Swain, and this is April. Go ahead, April.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. So today I'll be presenting on consent application 18-20 LOB for the Swain properties, looking at 1005 Bayview Acres Road and lands to the east. The purpose of this application is to obtain a consent to convey the parcel outlined in red on the sketch here, subject to and together with easements. As indicated by the applicant's lawyer, the 3 parcels as shown on this plan, again, the 3 parcels being this one outlined in green, another one outlined in red, and then the other one outlined in green there, were subject to previous consent applications in 1995 and 2001. However, these consents were lost as a result of transfer part 10 on this plan, on plan 35-16496, which essentially is this small strip here, to the neighboring property as part of a quitclaim deed in 2011, and therefore these properties have inadvertently merged. The subject application proposes to recreate the 3 lots. The lots are accessed by Bayview Acres Road, a private road off of Bayview Road, a year-round municipally maintained road. For Council's information, 4 letters of concern have been submitted by the neighboring property owners, Maura and Mark Dubé, as well as a response letter from the applicant's lawyer. All of these letters have been included in the agenda package for committee's consideration. As there is an ongoing litigation between Mr. and Mrs. Swain, being the applicants, and Mr. and Mrs. Dubé being the neighbors, and to determine any potential implications of the subject consent application on the subject and neighboring lands, staff sought a legal opinion from the township solicitor as to how best to proceed with this application prior to bringing it before committee. Staff have had discussions with the township solicitor and received a letter on September 1st of 2021, which outlines that based on correspondence reviewed, the basis of the neighbor's objection appears to be twofold. First is based on the ownership of Part 10 and the impact that the severance may have on these lands. The second pertaining to concerns with respect to the rights of way or easements, which may be impacted in favor of Mr. and Mrs. Dubé by the proposed severance. The township solicitor has advised the lands constituting Part 10 do not constitute any part of the proposed severance file, and further that it is quite clear that the proposed severance of the subject lands would be subject to and together with any easements which may exist and would therefore include both registered as well as unregistered easements in favor of any third party. In summary, the township solicitor advised that there would appear to be no valid reason why the subject application should not proceed to hearing by the committee, as concerns raised to date by Mr. and Mrs. Dubé are not grounds to defer the application for proceeding to hear for decision. As the parcels inadvertently merged, the properties were not subject were not purchased as one parcel. The severed and retained lots meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the waterfront residential zoning of each property. And it is known that the lots were previously registered separately. The criteria of section J52 of the township's official plan for the recreation of lots has been met. As this application is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement and generally conforms to the district and township official plans. And this application does not propose a creation of new lot, but proposes to recreate 3 parcels of land that inadvertently merged. Staff has no concerns with the approval of this application, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, April, for your report. I'm going to go to Councillor Anderson, then Councillor Tapley. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, through you, Chair. April, I'm just trying to figure out part 10. I'm staring at this and I think I've got it, but can you just put that back up and show me where part 10 is?
I realized I'm muted. This essentially is a strip here. You can see part 10 is labeled,
Yeah, okay.
and then essentially pointing to this strip here. I know it's kind of tricky to see.
Supplementary, if I can.
Go ahead.
Does part 10 sort of butt right onto the right of way? Is that? Or, yes.
Sorry,
okay.
sorry. I'll bring that back up again.
And leave it.
Yeah. So part 10 abuts there.
Okay, and Councillor Tapley's request you leave it up there because I think her question might be as well. Councillor Anderson, are you good with that?
Just one more.
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's kind of confusing.
Yeah. And Dubé property, I take it, is everything in to the right there, to the right of the. Is that just so I get a sense of where these people are?
Yes, and I believe that they're here today, wish to speak as well as the agent.
Great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just sorry, may I continue one more? Sure.
Go ahead.
So you're indicating through your report that any of the easements are not jeopardized by anything that is proposed here. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. In seeking a legal opinion from our township solicitor, indicated that these consents would not impact any existing rights of way, whether they are registered or unregistered easements.
Thanks. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. April, just help me out here by pointing out which lot is owned by who. Which is Dubé, which is also Dubé, which is Swain, and so on and so forth.
Sorry if I can just, so
Go
this
ahead.
application is the Swain application. So that's what we're dealing with here today. So all the lands that are outlined are the Swain property.
There's a bunch of properties outlined. There's green and red.
You, Mr. Chair, everything that is outlined in green and red is the subject properties that are owned by the Swains. That is subject to this application.
Okay, and which is the Dubé property?
Again, maybe we'll speak to that when if there is any public comments from the Dubés, I can speak more to that. But again, this is the Swain property that is subject to these applications.
Thank you.
Probably best to just follow that, Councillor Tapley, and we'll get to the next section as we move along quickly, I hope, through this. Councillor LaCroix, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question on, obviously I know the answer, but we have 3 lots that were accidentally merged by a lawyer. The township has already made them 3 lots in 95 and 2001. Wouldn't this just be a legal issue? Why do they have to resever the lots to make 3 new lots when they're already existing?
A technical question. Who'd like to take that? Go ahead, April.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant's agent who's here today and their lawyer made an application to recreate legally these 3 lots. And according to the applicant's agent and the lawyer, they inadvertently merged. So legally they have submitted an application to recreate those lots. But again, the agent is here today, can speak a little bit more about the background of that.
Okay, any other questions for April, Council? I see a cattail with a question, but the rest are okay. Okay, so let's go to Mr. Gallagher. Good morning, sir. Again, identify yourself for the record and take it away.
Good morning, members of the committee. John P. Gallagher, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9, planning consultant for Fred Swain. Prior to submitting the application, I received a call from Ross Bagshaw, who advised that there was an issue with the previous approval, and it related to the fact that the previous owner of the Dubé lands and the Swans had reached a settlement regarding the property ownership of that sliver known as Part 10. And as part of that, it basically broke the previous severance, and there's the old, once a severance, always a severance. And the lawyer advised that it had merged all the lots together. I'm not a lawyer, so I had to rely on Ross's opinion on that. And Ross has been doing this longer than me. The application was submitted, and together with the background information, including all the documentation, the neighbors who own the small lot to the east of the right-of-way, the new neighbors, they were not the ones that were in the previous litigation with the Swans, had provided some comments, and staff asked for Mr. Bagshaw to elaborate on his concerns. Again, it was beyond a planner's opinion, and he provided the legal opinion. After Mr. Bagshaw had provided the legal opinion, staff wanted to review that with the township solicitor, and the township solicitor has provided that opinion to you. As I stated, I'm not a lawyer, nor is Mrs. Dubé. I don't believe she's a lawyer. And so we're relying on the legal professionals in moving this application forward. The lots were previously created as lots. They're still large enough to be lots. There's ample room on each of the lots. They conform with the district official plan, the local official plan, and the provincial policy statement. So, read the report and the recommendations of the approval and have no objection to that. And Mr. Bagshaw has been provided copies of the staff report and has not provided any opinion on that. We would respectfully request that committee receive the input from your municipal solicitor and staff and go with the recommendation to approve the application. As your lawyer points out, it's not going to impact any rights of way or any further litigation from the new owners, the Dubés of the back lot that they have there. I believe Swan would like to say a few words, and I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Swain. How are you today? And
Very good, thank you.
Are you alone there? Or
No, my wife's here.
Okay, well, good morning to you too as well, Catherine, and just give me your name and address for the record and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Fred Swain, and this is Catherine here.
Hi.
And we're at 1005 Bayview Acres Road. And we're just here to answer any questions you might have about this matter.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council, any questions for Mr. Gallagher or Mr. Swain or Catherine Swain at this point? I don't see any. So is there someone else joining us? Yes, does anyone want to speak to this file from the public, please?
Yes, Mayor Glover.
Okay, hang on. I don't have anything. Go ahead. What do we? Oh, it's Moira Dubé. Good morning. If you could just identify yourself. Oh, I see it's popping up now. What's that? No. Well, something happened here anyway. I see. If you could identify yourself for the record, Maura, name and address, and then we can hear you if we can, or see you, depending on the internet connection.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me well now?
Yes, just speak as loudly as you can and we can hear you. And just give me your name and address for the record and go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Glover. My name is Maura Dubé. I reside at 5 Lyle Place, Guelph, Ontario, and 1L188. And
Okay.
I'd like to speak to this file. My husband and I have sent in a number of documents attesting to the fact that the right-of-way, the road right-of-way, which is separate from the right-of-way that you saw in the survey that April showed, that big chunky one, which is right beside our lot. The road right-of-way is the one that goes from Bayview Road, which is a municipally maintained road, and is called Bayview Acres Road. This road has been the subject of many discussions and is currently a very live issue in ongoing litigation in a lawsuit between the Swains and ourselves. We are contending that there is doubt as to the Swains' ownership of this road, and that as a result of that, we are proposing that this application be deferred until that matter is settled. The reason it is of so much concern to us is that if the township approves a new deed for the lot in question, for the severed lot, this would need to include parts of that road right-of-way. And if parts of that road right-of-way are presented as being owned by the Swains, the township is in fact making a decision, a legal decision, that currently should be before the court and hopefully will eventually be before the court. This could lead to complications down the road. We have, as I said, submitted several documents, including some to which Mr. Bagshaw responded. However, in his response, I note that he also did not get the location of the right-of-way exactly right. There is now an additional piece of road right-of-way which did not appear in the original documents. And I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee the fact that when I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read deed 12288, which I submitted only yesterday, unfortunately, in my response to Mr. Bagshaw. But in this deed, the right-of-way is shown as longer than the one to which Mr. Bagshaw refers. It is all very confusing. This is why we wanted the court to decide A, where the exact location is, and B, who actually owns the road. There is evidence to support the fact that either it is still in the hands of John Brown, the original owner of the lands, and the original owner and developer of the lands, and or B, because of the deposit by William Ellis, a clerk of the township, that it may in fact indicate that the township has an interest in this road. In either case, it is a legal matter and the courts need to be able to decide this. We are now on the brink of going to a second pretrial. The pretrial will determine whether we can in fact iron out our differences there or whether we have to go to trial. In either case, we are recommending, or we are respectfully asking that the township defer this decision until that legal determination is made. That is our concern with respect to the road right-of-way. Our concern with respect to part 10 Respectfully, if one looks at the report of the township on page 6 of the report, I don't know how to put things up on the screen, but if one looks at page 6 of the report in the discussion by Mr. Ewart of the case, he says that the severance will have no impact on the ownership of Part 10 owned by Mr. and Mrs. Dubé. That's absolutely correct. We never said that approving this consent application would have an effect on our ownership of Part 10. We said, as you saw, that because Part 10 abuts the proposed right-of-way through the severed lot, and because Part 10 was part of all the site determination and the proposal for the severance of a lot, that, and also with regard to Pinestone Engineering, which was also part of that initial report, that excuse me, just a second, let me just collect my thoughts here. Our concern is that Part 10 was originally part of the construction of that right-of-way. Now, the Swains no longer have Part 10. However, the proposed construction is still existing. And what we're afraid of is that they're going to go ahead at some point and develop that piece of land without taking into consideration that Part 10 needed to develop that is no longer theirs. So that is our concern. And when Mr. Ewart said it doesn't impact the ownership of it, that's correct. It doesn't impact our ownership of Part 10. It impacts the fact that our property will be impacted by the development of the Swain lands to the west of our lot. And that is why we are asking respectfully for a deferral of this until these matters can be settled.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura, for that. Council, I don't know how long you want to debate this or look at it, or do you have enough evidence to say you would support a deferral until it gets sorted out? I'm looking to council for something. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, let's go to Councilor Anderson. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Glover, to staff, I totally respect all the hard work, and of course, none of us are lawyers, and I respect the lawyers' comments and so on. But I'm still massively confused, and I just don't feel I can raise my hand one way or the other when I just don't understand this whole topic at this point to a little more, to a better extent. And I think I would support a deferral.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilor Brooks, support a deferral, or go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Anderson. We as lay members of council, we're not legalese, and I see there's enough information here that is totally out of our realm. I would suggest that we do a deferral and allow the lawyers to do battle and then bring it back to us at a later date.
Councillor Popard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I was hearing from staff and perhaps our legal department is ownership right-of-way had nothing to do with the accidental merging of these lots when they had been subdivided, and it's just a correction, and the right-of-way is a separate issue altogether, but maybe staff can speak to that.
Okay, so do you have can you give me just a
yes.
real...
Okay. Yeah. Okay, if I could ask staff that, does the ownership, non-ownership, access, use thereof of any and all of the right-of-ways have anything at all to do with the application here today to ensure that lands are severed in the way that they were supposed to be?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as spoken about at this meeting, it is a very technical kind of legal application. So staff have relied on our township solicitor's advice. And you are correct that the right-of-way and ownership of Part 10, none of that is subject to the consent application. This consent application before committee today is recreating 3 lots that inadvertently merged on title. These 3 lots did exist, were created back in 1995 and 2001, and have since merged. And essentially the application before our committee today is just to recreate those. Again, no rights of way would be impacted. They would continue to exist, and the ownership of Part 10, like our solicitor said, is not pertinent to the application. It is owned by another, by the neighboring property owner.
Thank you. So I will not be supporting a deferral. I think an accidental thing was happened, and I think that the owners have the right to have the lands resevered again, which they should have stayed severed in the first place. So I won't be voting for a deferral. I'll be supporting staff on this one.
Okay. So, council, I'm looking for comments from you. Go ahead. Who's next? Councillor Croy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that was my understanding, that this is just to make right what went wrong when the 3 lots be merged as one. So now what we're looking at doing is reapplying that, making the 1 lot into 3, nothing to do with the right-of-ways. If these are now going to be 3 lots, if we approve it today, then any development of the lots would have to come back for a right-of-way over the said lands. Is that correct?
April?
Through you, Mr. Chair, any existing rights of way, like our solicitor had mentioned, would continue to exist. So anything that is existing, registered and unregistered, would continue to apply to these lands.
Okay, Councillor Goddard.
Thank you. That was my question too. They do have severed lots here. They all do need a deeded right of way to access. It can't be landlocked. So I support staff's decision on this.
Okay, Councillor Tapley.
Come on, having trouble unmuting. How unlike me. I support staff on this.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the public else that wishes to speak to this? Public else, what's that mean? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this further? Okay, seeing none, I have before me, and am I just reading the top one? Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor LaCroix, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Whereas the Committee of Adjustment whereas the Committee of Adjustment of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays hereby receives a staff report B18-20 LV Swain, 1005 Bayview Acres Road and lands to the east, roll number 040-014-02200 and 040-014-02300 and 040-014-02305 dated September 28th, 2021. And whereas the applicants have submitted consent applications B18-20 LOB in order to obtain a consent to convey the parcel described as Part 3, 5-7, 11, 15-19, 26-29 on Plan 35R-16496 and Part 5 on Plan 35R 19563, subject to and together with easements. Be it resolved that consent application B18-20 LB Swain be approved subject to the provisional decision attached to the staff report as Appendix B. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, folks. Have yourself a good day. Is this, oh, okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Goddard, seconded by Councillor Papard. Be resolved the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Lake Bays hereby adjourns the meeting of September 28, 2021 at 10:26 a.m. to meet again on October 26, 2021 at 9 a.m. in the council chambers of the Municipal Office, Dwight, Ontario. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take, I would like to have just a short break of 5 minutes. Who can do the math on that? So we'll be back at 10:32. Does that sound right? Good. I got that one right. Okay, at 10:32, we'll be back to meet again. Please shut off your audio and visual, council, and we will be Okay, we're waiting for Councillor Tapley and Councillor Brooks. And Councillor Brooks is here, so we can go ahead, right? Okay, thank you folks for that short break. We appreciate that. We're moving now into Council for Planning Matters. And I'm looking for the, okay, good. Moved by Councillor Papard, seconded by Councillor Tapley. Be it resolved, the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays hereby approves the agenda for the meeting of September 28th, 2021. Council for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. It'll be noted that Councillor Tapley's still there. She's back now. Okay. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the nature thereof? Council. I see Councillor LaCroix. Go ahead, Councillor LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, under C, section 41, under agreements, number F03-21 Lake of Bays, Bay Street Boys, due to family matters.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing none. This is the consent agenda. Yeah. Okay. Of course, we have the consent agenda that I have heard from no one that wants anything pulled from that. So that is the moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor LaCroix, whereas the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays reviewed the consent agenda consisting of various proposed resolutions. Be it resolved, the Mayor and Council approve and adopt the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated September 28, 2021, and direct staff to proceed with all the necessary administrative actions. Council for that. All those in favor? And that's carried as well. Thank you. Okay. And then the minutes. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Be it resolved, the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays adopts the minutes for the Council for Planning Matters meeting dated August 31st, 2021. Questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, thank you. Going for the vote, all those in favor? That's indeed carried. Thank you. Okay. Here we go. We have amendments to bylaws 04-180 and 04-181. Irene Hordinko and John Jakubowski. And this is April. Go ahead, April.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. So today we're presenting on rezoning application 20-21 for the Hordinko and Jakubowski property located at 1150 North Real Lake Road. As council will recall, this application was heard at the Council Planning Matters meeting of July 27th, 2021, whereby the applicants requested relief to demolish an existing shed and portion of an existing dock and construct a deck addition and Muskoka room on top of a portion of an existing deck, proposed deck addition along the front of one of the 3 legal nonconforming dwellings on the property, resulting in a greater footprint and size than an existing legal nonconforming dwelling. As staff had no concerns for the approval of the application, provided that the overall proposed lot coverage did not exceed the existing lot coverage, staff recommended approval of the application and for a bylaw to be brought forward to a subsequent meeting, including an updated site plan which identified all buildings and structures on the property with a total lot coverage of no greater than existing. The council resolution was passed accordingly. A request was submitted on August 17th of 2021 by the applicant's agent, outlining that the applicants no longer wish to proceed with the application, and therefore requests that the council resolution be rescinded. Therefore, a resolution to rescind council resolution number 6AI 07-27-21 is required to close the file. Here's some photos of the subject lands. Just to refresh council's memory, this is where the proposed deck and Muskoka room addition are going to be located. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, April, for your report. Council, this is housekeeping. We're just cleaning up a request. So I'm going to ask, is there anyone who wishes to comment or questions? Seeing none. Okay, I'm going to go to this. Moved by Councillor Tapley, seconded by Councillor Papard. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bay hereby receives a staff report zoning bylaw amendment application Z20-21 LOB Hordienko and Jakubowski to rescind Council Resolution Number 6AI07-27-21 1150 North River Lake Road Rule Number 030-005-03600 dated September 28, 2021, and whereas the applicant submitted zoning bylaw amendment application Z20-21 LOB Hordienko and Jakubowski in order to facilitate the demolition of an existing shed and portion of an existing dock and construction of a deck addition and Muskoka room on top of a portion of an existing deck and proposed deck addition along the front of one of the 3 legal non-conforming dwellings on the property, resulting in a greater footprint and size than an existing legal non-conforming dwelling. And whereas the application was heard at the Council for Planning Matters meeting July 27, 2021, whereby staff recommended that the application Z20-21 LOB Hordienko and Jakubowski be approved and that the said bylaw, that a bylaw be brought forward to a subsequent meeting, including an updated site plan, which identified all building structures on the property with a total of lot coverage of no greater than existing. Council Resolution 6AI07-27-21 was passed accordingly. And whereas request now has been submitted on August 17, 2021 by the applicant's agent outlining that the applicants no longer wish to proceed with their application and therefore request that Council Resolution Number 6AI07-27-21 be rescinded. Be resolved that Council Resolution Number 6AI07-27-21 be rescinded. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? Thank you for that, and that's carried. Okay. Moving along, I have Z24-21 LB applicants Margaret and Arndt Kruger, and this is April. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. So today I'll be presenting on rezoning application 24-21 for the Kruger property located at 1131 Old Highway 117, Unit 2. The purpose of this application is to rezone the subject lands from the Waterfront Residential Development Permit Area to Waterfront Residential with an Exception Development Permit Area to facilitate the construction of a 6-foot wide by 16-foot long dock extension to an existing 360 square foot dock, which requires relief for an increase in the maximum length of a dock from the shoreline to 76 feet, whereas the existing dock is 60 feet in length and the maximum length of a dock permitted is 66 feet. So you can see here the existing finger dock is in yellow, and then the proposed 96 square foot dock addition in red. This dock has already been removed, and I'll speak about that in my presentation. Here are some photos of the subject lands. On the left here is the existing dwelling going down towards the shoreline, and then a view of the shoreline from the dwelling. And here are some photos of the dock and shoreline of the subject lands. So here is the shoreline of the subject lands, view out of the dock, and then the water level kind of at the end of that dock there. The applicants advised that the original crib dock, which is shown here, was destroyed during the ice breakup in 2019, whereby an application was made to remove the crib dock, which was badly damaged, and to replace it with an aluminum finger dock, which currently exists. The applicants have stated that the shoreline and entry into the water is very gentle, making it difficult to dock a boat. The removable aluminum docks installed this year is located 5.5 meters from the northern property line with a greater setback from the southern property line, whereby the dock itself runs parallel with the property. Therefore, the proposed addition would maintain this setback. The dock meets all other provisions of the Development Permit Bylaw 04-180. Staff identified the need for appropriate dock projection to achieve sufficient water depth to dock a boat, that the increased dock projection would have minimal aesthetic impacts on adjacent properties, given that the existing dock and proposed addition are a sufficient distance from neighboring properties, that the shoreline of the subject lands appears quite shallow, which would provide justification for a greater length of dock to achieve appropriate water depths for boating, and that there are a number of docks in the area that are similar or greater lengths as shown on this aerial image here. Overall, staff is of the opinion that proposed new dock, resulting in a greater projection than permitted by the bylaw, maintains, fits into, and uses the natural characteristics of the shallow area in which it is located, and that appropriate balance between the natural vegetation and built form can be maintained by not identifying a shoreline activity area to prevent the removal of any shoreline vegetation without further approval under Bylaw 04-180, and by retaining existing vegetation on the property. The application generally conforms with the district and township official plans and is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement. Therefore, staff has no concerns with the approval of this application, subject to the recommendations outlined in the report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, April, for the report. Council, questions for April? Councilor LaCroix.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, just a comment that I agree totally with staff's recommendation. That's very close to our park at Norway Point. All the shore around there is very shallow. You can walk out a long ways before you get any depth at all. So just for council's information.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? Seeing none, the owner is here. If I could, Mr. Kruger, go ahead. Are you, if you'd like to ask anything or make comment?
No, I don't think I'll have any extra comments. I think it has been very well presented by April, the situation. It's a very shallow area. And as April also pointed out, the docks, the neighboring docks are quite a bit longer than ours, and they have been there for a long time.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Any other public questions or comments? Seeing none, council, any questions for anyone? Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. Excuse me, I've got some background noise.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Goddard, very
Yes.
quickly. Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to ask the owner, will you be installing a boat lift at all?
Okay, so that question is going to you, Mr. Kruger. Are you going to be installing a boat lift? And sir, before you answer it, if you could just say your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Arne Kruger, 491 Homewood Avenue, Peterborough, K9H2N2.
Thank you, sir. And the question was with regard to a boat lift.
Just the very moment the question was asked, the Zoom rejoined me and I didn't hear the question.
Oh, okay. So the question was, will you be installing a boat lift from Councillor Goddard?
Yes, there on one of the pictures it said already that there is a boat lift. That's the only way to protect. We are facing west and we're facing often quite strong winds. It wouldn't be impossible to just dock the boat right next to the lift, so the dock without a boat lift. So to keep the boat safe, yes, we have a boat lift as it was shown on one of the pictures.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question on that photograph. Is that our first drone photo? No?
Sorry, I can't.
No, it's okay, Mr. Kruger. The question wasn't for you, sir. It was a question with regards to whether that was a drone photo or not. And anyway, we've got some new drone pilots here, sir, and we're all very excited to show pictures that we've actually taken, but it had nothing to do with the case in front of us. Any other questions, folks? Council? Is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor LaCroix. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays hereby receives a staff report zoning bylaw amendment application Z24-21 Lob Kruger 1131-2 Old Highway 117, roll number 030-011-11900 dated September 28, 2021. And where the applicants have submitted zoning bylaw amendment application 24-21 Lob Kruger in order to facilitate the construction of a dock extension to an existing dock with relief for an increase in the maximum length of a dock from the shoreline, be resolved that application Z24-21 Lob Kruger be approved. and that the bylaw 2021-097 be given 3 readings. Council, for the question, all those in favor? And that's carried. And then the bylaw, moved by Councillor Croy, seconded by Councillor Brooks, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 04-180, known as the Development Permit Bylaw Kruger Z 24-21 LOB roll number 030-011-11900-1131-2 Old Highway 117 be read a third time, and number 2021-097 that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, seal with the seal of corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Council, for the bylaw, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Kruger. You have yourself a wonderful day. Okay, moving along. Next on mine is Michael and Philomena Dunning, and this is Z27-21 LOB, and it will be April. Go ahead, April, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. So today I'll be presenting on rezoning application 27-21 LOB for the Dunning property located on Long Line Lake Road. The purpose of this application is to rezone the subject lands from the waterfront residential development permit area to waterfront residential with an exception development permit area to facilitate the construction of a 2,136 square foot single-story dwelling with attached deck, porch, muskoka room, and garage, as well as a 210 square foot dock, which requires relief to permit one single detached dwelling on the property and an increase in the maximum lot coverage. The effect of the bylaw is to permit the development of an existing vacant lot with a single detached dwelling with an increase in overall lot coverage that is located on an over-threshold lake, whereby a new dwelling is not permitted under the Township's Development Permit Bylaw 04-180 on over-threshold lakes. Here are some photos of the subject lands, essentially from Long Line Lake Road, looking down towards the shoreline. As you can see, there's a significant amount of vegetation throughout the property. I'll go back to this. So Long Line Lake is currently identified as an over-threshold lake in the Township's Development Permit Bylaw, with policies in the Township's official plan speaking to requirements for development of vacant lots on over-threshold lakes. However, as Council will recall, Official Plan Amendment number 18 was adopted by Township Council at the August 31st, 2021 meeting, in order to ensure that the Township's official plan is in conformity with changes to the District official plan made in 2019, which has the effect of removing over-threshold lake classification, thereby removing the applicable sections in the Township's official plan. However, as the Township's Development Permit Bylaw still contains a provision that states that one single detached dwelling is not a permitted use on properties that front on over-threshold lakes, the subject zoning bylaw amendment application is required. With the proposed development of the property, the overall lot coverage is 12.5%, whereas 10% is the maximum permitted. Given that the proposed development meets all applicable setbacks and that a significant amount of vegetation exists on the property, including along the shoreline, staff have no concerns with the increase in maximum lot coverage. Overall, staff is of the opinion that the proposed development of the property, resulting in an increased overall lot coverage, maintains, fits into, and uses the natural characteristics of the property, and is in character with development in the surrounding area, and that an appropriate balance between the natural vegetation and built form can be maintained by not identifying a shoreline activity area to prevent the removal of any shoreline vegetation without further approval under Bylaw 04-180, and by retaining all vegetation on the property outside of the proposed development, with the exception of a permeable meandering pathway to the dock. The application generally conforms with the District and Township official plans and is consistent with the 2020 Provincial Policy Statement. Therefore, staff has no concerns with the approval of this application, subject to the recommendations outlined in the report. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you for the report, April. Questions or comments from council? Looking to you, folks. Councillor Goddard, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. Yes, April, did you say there's a slope to the water front?
Through you, Mayor Glover, as illustrated in the photos, there's a gradual slope down towards the shoreline.
Would there be a need for a retaining wall? This is what I just, because I don't see it in the plans, but this often does come up. And I just thought I would ask your opinion on that. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Glover, that's correct. It's not included in the plans, but we do have the owners here who could speak a little bit more about what they plan to do with the property, what might be needed to construct on there.
Other questions for April? Councilor Papard, go ahead.
Just a comment through you, Mr. Mayor. Because it's an undeveloped lot and we're starting from scratch, I know the over threshold doesn't count anymore, but I think we should really keep it to the 10% lot coverage. It's brand new, it's a new build, there's been no building before it. I think we should really keep it to 10% and not start with going over on an undeveloped lot.
Okay, Councilor Anderson.
I had exactly the same comment, so I would like to just reinforce what Councilor Papard has just stated.
Okay. We're having a look at that. I'm going to go now to, is there an agent or are the owners are here? Yep. Michael or Philomena Dunning, do you wish to make comment? Do I have any comment from Michael or Philomena Dunning? Not seeing. You might hear Councillor Brooks, he's got his audio on.
Mayor Glover?
Yep.
It just popped up in the chat that they're having audio trouble.
Okay, thank you. I will look to our technicians, producers, directors here to make a determination how we would best deal with that. Oh, I hear something there.
I turned my mic on, so I'm not sure if that
okay.
may have changed
Oh,
it.
thanks.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I can really think of is I don't know if we can have them leave the meeting and come back, but the alternative would be that we can try again and move on.
Here
Oh,
they
there
are.
we go.
Wonderful. Okay, through the magic and science of technology, I see Michael and Philomena Dunning have joined us with audio. And can you push on your microphone, please? There we
now
go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we are. If you,
oh, finally, excellent.
Good morning and welcome. Could you please identify yourself with a name and an address for the record, and then you can state your case.
Morning, Mike and Philomena Dunning. We live at 18 Thrushwood Drive in Barrie. We have sold our home here, and we're intending to move up there. That's part of the reason why we need the additional square footage, is that it will be our permanent residence. We initially started with a larger ask, but we worked with staff to reduce the footprint to the extent possible. We had initially wanted a double garage, for example, and scaled that down to the extent possible. So we've really done our best to try and work with staff to get down to a reasonable level. And like I say, it's our permanent home, so it's important that we get it right.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to council. Councillor Goddard, you had a question about a retaining wall. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, because that does come up that that people do install them after the fact. So were you considering a retaining wall in part of your landscaping?
No, not at this point. We don't think that it's required anywhere for a retaining wall.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Papard, do you go ahead with discussion to the 10%?
I think, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think they've pretty much just discussed it with staff and brought it down as much as possible. So, you know, grudgingly satisfied with the 12.5%.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for the Dunnings of Barrie? Congratulations on the sale of your house.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Is there anyone from the public wishes to comment on this file? Okay, I'm getting the nod no. So in front of me, I have moved by Councillor Brooks, seconded by Councillor LaCroix. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays hereby receives a staff report, zoning bylaw amendment application Z27-21 Ellaby Dunning, Long Line Lake Road, roll number 030-015-03500, dated September 28, 2021. And whereas the applicants have submitted zoning bylaw amendment application 27-21 Ellaby Dunning in order to facilitate the construction of a single-story dwelling with attached deck, porch, Muskoka room, and garage, as well as dock with relief to permit one single detached dwelling and an overage in lot coverage. Be resolved that application Z 27-21 Ellaby Dunning be approved, and that the bylaw 2021-098 be given 3 readings. Council, for that, all in favor? There we go. Councillor Brooks got up there. He's got a little slower internet. Okay, and the bylaw, moved by Councillor LaCroix, seconded by Councillor Brooks, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 04-180, known as the Development Permit Bylaw Dunning Z27-21 Ellaby roll number 030-015-03500, Long Line Lake Road, be read a 3rd time, and number 2021-098, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of corporation, be engrossed in the bylaw book. Council, for the bylaw, all those in favor? And that's carried as well. Thank you very much, and best of luck to you folks, and have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, next I'm moving to file. Oh, that's for that. Now we're into council variations to development permit bylaw. And I have 04-1A, DP 108-21 Ellaby applicants William Housen. And that will be, oh, Miss Thaler, good morning, or yep, it's still good morning. Good morning and welcome to you. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good.
Feel
Go
like
ahead, whenever you're ready.
It's been a while. See if I remember how to do this. So a variance application has been submitted for a waterfront property located at 1057 Montgomery Bay Road, accessed off of Port Cunnington Road. The owner of the property wishes to demolish an existing 700 square foot deck attached to a legal non-complying dwelling, and to construct 2 smaller 376 square foot decks on opposite sides of the building. The owner also wishes to demolish an existing 211 square foot 3-season porch and to construct a larger 387 square foot porch in the same location. Just to help illustrate, the red lines outline the proposed structure, and this sort of shaded yellow is the existing, and this blue in here is the existing porch, if that helps. The property is over 13 acres in area and has a shoreline frontage of roughly 475 feet. It's well vegetated with mature trees and slopes gradually from the dwelling down to the shoreline. The lot lines presented on the mapping are not totally correct. As you can see, the difference between the aerial photo here, these fine lines, versus this rendering of a survey. The property is currently developed with a single-story log structure, a dock, a sleeping cabin, and several sheds outside of the shoreline yard, as well as one within. A fire pit amenity space directly in front of the dwelling is the only significantly cleared area within the shoreline yard. And there we have your first drone photo of the day. Councillor Tapley.
Well, I would be remiss not to congratulate you, Emily, on your drone pilot's license, and we're all very, very excited. So there you go. Don't just skim over that. That's a way to go. Good work. Okay.
The proposal as submitted requires 2 variances from the development permit bylaw. The first variance is for the shoreline yard setback. The subject lands are located on Lake of Bays, which has a minimum shoreline yard setback of 20 meters. In addition, a portion of the frontage of the subject lands has been identified a sensitive type 1 fish habitat and is subsequently zoned waterfront environmental protection. A minimum setback of 30 meters is therefore generally required. This is the steps, a picture of the steps off the front deck, which would be the closest point to the water. This is just a bit more of a close-up for the shoreline yard setback. The existing legal non-compliant deck and attached stairs have a shoreline yard setback of approximately 27.2 feet at its closest point. As the existing deck would be removed, the proposed deck on the west side of the dwelling would be closest to the shoreline and would have a minimum setback of 31.8 feet at its closest point, which would not encroach any closer than existing. The existing three-season porch area is situated further from the shoreline than the existing deck and has a shoreline setback of 41.7 feet. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself in the slides. The proposed screened-in porch addition would increase slightly in depth and width and would subsequently have a shoreline yard setback of 36 feet, a decrease of 5.6 feet beyond the existing three-seasoned porch. However, it would remain about 9 feet farther back than the existing building line of the deck. Because the proposed additions would not encroach closer to the shoreline than the existing building line, it's staff's opinion that as the proposed deck and three-season room would not negatively impact the shoreline, and as the encroachment is not being further exacerbated, there would be no requirement for a habitat assessment related to the type 1 fish habitat. The second variance requested is regarding the size of the addition within the shoreline yard, as per section 4.39 of the development permit bylaw. The existing deck and portion of the dwelling to be removed total an area within the shoreline yard of approximately 910 square feet. The proposed decks and three-season room would result in an increase of about 230 square feet beyond that. Section 4.39 of the development permit bylaw permits an addition to a legal non-complying dwelling within the shoreline yard of no more than 50% of the allowable shoreline activity area coverage as a staff variation. Anything greater than that is required to be approved by council. The proposed increase in floor area of about 230 square feet represents an increase of 11.5% of the allowable shoreline activity area coverage and therefore could be approved as a staff variation. However, it has been included in the resolution to provide council with a comprehensive resolution for the property. It's staff's opinion that the proposed additional coverage in the shoreline yard for a lot with a frontage and size such as this does not represent an excess of built form. As stated previously, the subject lands have a shoreline length of 475 feet, and therefore an allowable shoreline activity area frontage of the maximum allowable 75.4 feet, or 23 meters. The development permit bylaw states that all existing legal non-complying dwellings and sleeping cabins within the shoreline yard are to be included in the shoreline activity area frontage. The existing dwelling is located within the shoreline yard and therefore contributes, to shoreline activity area frontage. The owners were able to work with staff during early pre-consultations to limit the width of the proposed decks so that the overall width would not increase the shoreline activity area frontage beyond the maximum permitted 23 meters or 75.4 feet. The proposed decks would be uncovered and unenclosed, and the proposed three-season room would not exceed the height of the existing dwelling. Staff is therefore of the opinion that there would be limited negative visual impacts and the balance between the natural environment and built form on the subject lands could be maintained. It is therefore staff's opinion that the proposed development is in keeping with the size and frontage of the property and meets the intent, design, principles, and policies of the official plan, is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement, and therefore staff had no concerns with the provisional approval of this application subject to the conditions outlined in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your report, Emily. Questions, comments from council? Go ahead. Who has anything they'd like to say? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Glover. Emily, I'm just a little confused about the 11.5%. Is that sort of added to, like, what's the current shoreline activity area, or does that can you help me interpret the 11.5%? I'm struggling with that.
Through you, Mr.
Go
Mayor.
ahead.
So section 4.39, it's not saying that the addition adds to the shoreline activity area coverage. It's sort of in proportion to the shoreline activity area coverage. So anything greater than 50% of the allowable shoreline activity area coverage in square footage is required to be approved by council. However, anything below that is still required to be approved by at least staff. So that's why it's included. It doesn't add to the shoreline activity area coverage for this lot. And even if it did, the shoreline is so large that it wouldn't, extend it beyond anything to be concerned about. Does that help explain? It's a bit of a convoluted section.
Thank you. I think I'm getting that, but so it hasn't actually increased the shoreline area
I'm going to take this.
coverage. Is that correct?
Melissa, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point, as Emily had touched on in her presentation, there's a lot of numbers when we start looking in shoreline activity areas and waterfront development. But the shoreline activity area coverage does not include legal complying dwellings. So when staff are looking at any of the increases to coverage, existing dwellings, existing structures within the shoreline area do not contribute to that. So that's not a calculation that staff does to show you what the percentage already is. But what we do is you're allowed 40% of your shoreline activity area. So let's say that's what you have. You're allowed 20% of that, which is 50%, to be an addition. So that's how we deal with legal non-complying within the municipality, is we don't want to see, double or triple the size of dwellings, but there is some exceptions to additions to existing structures. And that's why the existing dwellings and any structures in the shoreline yard that are legal as of 1996, they do not contribute to that. So that's not a calculation that staff has calculated at this time.
Okay, further questions, council? Seeing none, I saw someone pop on the screen for a second there. Oh, Stephanie, good morning. Stephanie Sharp. If you could give us your name and address for the record and take it away whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Certainly. Good morning. Stephanie Sharp. I'm a planner for Marie Poirier Planning and Associates, located at 44A King William Street in Huntsville, postal code P1H1G3. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking the time to hear this application, and thank you, Ms. Thaler, for your presentation. We concur with staff that the proposed deck is constructed at an increased setback from the existing. The proposed screen porch maintains a setback greater than the existing deck, and there's no negative impact resulting from the proposed structure. The mature vegetation buffer along the shoreline will be maintained, and we agree to remove the shed from the shoreline yard as required. Our firm would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank staff for their assistance on this application and for their time spent working with us. We respectfully request the approval of this application as recommended by staff, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions that may arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Stephanie, council? Not seeing any. I see none. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak to this file? Okay, anyone, including the owner? Does anyone want to speak to this file? Not seeing any. So I have in front of me, moved by Councillor Tapley. Oh, Councillor Goddard, go ahead.
It's just a comment and an observation I made of this property. It is a really wonderful, well-protected shoreline, and I just wanted to bring that up. It's a good example, and I really appreciate seeing this. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'm afraid to look away. Everybody good? Okay. Moved by Councillor Tapley, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays hereby receives a staff report, development permit application DP 108-21 LB House and 1057 Montgomery Bay Road, property roll number 010-017-06100, dated September 28, 2021. And whereas the applicant has submitted development permit application DP 108-21 LB Housen in order to permit the demolition of an existing dock and screened porch and the construction of 2 decks on either side of the dwelling and a larger screened-in porch. And whereas relief from the following sections of bylaw number 04-180 is required to permit the proposed construction. So the requirement is section 5.1.1, minimum shoreline yard setback, 30 meters, 98.4 feet. The existing is 12.7 meters, 41.7 feet to a dwelling, and 8.3 meters, 27.2 feet to stairs attached to a deck. And the relief applied for is to permit a maximum shoreline yard setback of 11 meters, 36.1 feet to a screened-in porch. In section 4.39, the size of the addition will be restricted to a max of 50% of the total permitted shoreline activity area coverage in a staff variation. There is nothing existing, and to permit it's not applicable, and to permit an addition to a dwelling of 11.5% of the total permitted shoreline activity area coverage. Now be it resolved, the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of Township of Lake Bays provisionally approves this application pending the receipt and approval of, and to the satisfaction of the township, of the following: confirmation that a shed located in the shoreline yard and identified on Schedule A is removed or relocated beyond 20 meters, 65.6 feet from the shoreline. Upon receipt and approval of the required item, then the criteria as outlined in Schedule C of the development permit bylaw would thereby be fulfilled, and council would hereby approve the subject proposal in accordance with attached Schedule A, subject to the following conditions: that the works be carried out in accordance with the plan submitted July 23rd, 2021, and marked DP 108-21 LOB, that all lighting facilities shall be directed downwards and be required to minimize the impact on lake views, neighboring properties, night skies, and environmental features, that on a property adjacent to water, a shoreline buffer shall be maintained, rebutting any portion of a shoreline that does not form part of the shoreline activity area if it is identified in the attached schedule. A shoreline buffer shall be a minimum of 15 meters, 49.2 feet in depth, measured inland from the ordinary water's edge unless otherwise specified. All other provisions of Bylaw 04-180 must be complied with. If an activity area is not identified, all shoreline vegetation shall be maintained, and that all existing vegetation on the remainder of the lot, as of the date of passing of this resolution, be retained. Council, for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Moving along, we have DP 86-21 LB applicants Ingrid Elizabeth Bailey. And this is again, Ms. Thaler. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. A variance application has been submitted for a waterfront property located at 1113 Menominee Lake Road on the east side of Menominee Lake. The owner of the property wishes to demolish an existing dwelling and to construct a new, larger dwelling with attached deck at an increased shoreline setback. The owner also wishes to demolish an existing dock and to construct a slightly larger dock in the same location. Council will recall that an application was brought forward to Council on July 27th, 2021. At that time, variances were required to permit an increase in lot coverage and shoreline activity area frontage, and to permit a height increase greater than 15% to an existing dwelling, and a floor area increase within the shoreline yard greater than 50% of the allowable shoreline activity area coverage. Council passed a resolution to defer the application in order to allow time for the applicant to revise the proposal to be more in keeping with the lot coverage and width of the existing legal non-complying dwelling, and to reduce the size of the proposed dwelling to be more in keeping with the official plan and development permit bylaw. Since that time, the applicant and agent have submitted a revised proposal for Council's consideration. Council will recall that the property has an area of approximately 0.42 acres and a shoreline frontage of 107.5 feet. It is generally level and well vegetated at the rear and along the lot lines and part of the shoreline. However, the property lacks any mature vegetation between the dwelling and the immediate shoreline. The proposal, as submitted, requires several variances from Council. The first is for maximum allowable lot coverage. The existing legal non-complying dwelling has a floor area of 1,346 square feet, and the existing dock has an area of approximately 147 square feet, resulting in a lot coverage of 8.2%. The proposed dwelling would have a larger footprint of 2,098 square feet, including the attached deck, and the proposed dock would have a slightly increased area to 162 square feet, resulting in an increase in lot coverage to 12.5%, where 10% is the maximum permitted, and where a maximum of 12.5% could be approved as a staff variation. The second variance required is for maximum allowable shoreline activity area frontage. As stated, the subject lands have a shoreline length of 107.5 feet, and therefore an allowable shoreline activity area frontage of just under 27 feet, being that 25%. The development permit bylaw states that all existing legal non-complying dwellings and sleeping cabins within the shoreline yard are to be included within shoreline activity area coverage. Menominee Lake has a minimum required shoreline yard setback of 100 feet, and the existing legal non-complying dwelling has a shoreline yard setback of 23 feet to its closest point. As the dwelling is entirely within the shoreline yard and has a width of 36 feet, the existing legal non-complying shoreline activity area frontage is 33.8%. The proposed deck would be constructed at a minimum shoreline setback of 48 feet, and the dwelling would have a setback of 56 feet, pulling the structure roughly 23 feet back from the shoreline. This proposed dwelling, the proposed dwelling would have a width of 51 or almost 52 feet, but as the setback results in only a portion of the width of the overall structure being within the shoreline yard, the resulting shoreline activity area frontage would be increased to 39.9%, or about 43 feet. Staff is of the opinion that though the shoreline activity area frontage would be increased beyond what is existing and what would generally be permitted, the increased setback of the dwelling would allow for additional plantings and mitigative measures to bring the majority of the shoreline more in keeping with the development permit bylaw. The final variance required is for an increase in height. Section 4.39 of the development permit bylaw states that an increase in height greater than 15% of the existing height of a legal non-complying dwelling within the shoreline yard shall require a Category 2 development permit as a council variation. The existing dwelling has a height of approximately 18.2 feet, and the proposed dwelling would have a height of 22.6 feet, being an increase of 24.2% greater than existing. Staff is of the opinion that the increase in height of the proposed dwelling is largely mitigated by the proposed increase in shoreline setback. Previously, the applicants had also sought a variance from section 4.39 of the development permit bylaw, which for the increase in size of the dwelling within the shoreline yard. This section restricts additions to a maximum of 50% of the total permitted shoreline activity area coverage in a staff variation, and requires a proposal which exceeds that to be approved through a council variation. With the proposed dwelling now largely outside of the shoreline yard, the requirement for this variance has been removed, and there will be no additional floor area added to the shoreline yard. It's staff's opinion that the proposed development is now in keeping with the size and frontage of the property and generally meets the intent, design principles, and policies of the official plan and is in character with the surrounding area. The application generally conforms with both the township official plan and is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement. Therefore, staff have no concerns with the provisional approval of this application subject to the conditions outlined in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I believe the agent may also be in attendance.
Thank you, Emily, for your report. Council, questions for Emily? I see Councillor Anderson. Go ahead, then Councillor Goddard after that.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. And to you, Emily, the drawing, I'm wondering if you could bring up the drawing again of the site plan of where the new building would be. Really appreciate that.
Let's see, hold on.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
That's okay. When I look at that, the area that confuses me is normally the shoreline yard is the 20 meters where the original building exists. On Menominee, is it not a 30-meter setback, and therefore doesn't the yard become 30 meters? In other words, does that new build sit entirely in the 30-meter setback area? You see where I'm coming from? Like I thought that setback on Menominee on these, on a few of these lakes was 30 meters back.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, the shoreline yard as defined by our development permit bylaw is 20 meters.
Okay.
And it's sort of irregardless of the setback of the lake. So even if the setback is 30 meters, the shoreline yard still starts at that 20 meters.
That's what I was
activity
trying to
area.
that confused me. Thank you very much.
Councillor Godard.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. Emily, did you stipulate plantings right across the shoreline other than the activity, like a small area getting to the dock? Because looking at the photos, it looks like there's been some trees removed. Maybe they're dead. Some weren't. I'm just wondering, it appears to look pretty clear cut. So do they have to revegetate a larger portion than it appears here that this is all vegetated on the site plan, but I'm just wondering, it doesn't look like that in the photos. So
through you, Mr. Through you,
Thank
Mr. Mayor, there is a condition in the proposed resolution for a planting plan to establish, to reestablish sort of that 26, almost 27 foot shoreline activity area that you see there. And so the plantings have been identified to occur in this area here for that first 15 meters, if that helps to explain. I don't think I have a photo of that plan on my PowerPoint, but I can bring it up if you'd like.
yes, please, because it just appears to be clear cut to me right across the front when I look at the photos.
Yeah, it should be in the agenda as well, but I will see if I can pull it up. Just give me a moment. You see that? Is that showing up okay? So this is in the agenda, or sorry, in the report as part of the draft resolution. And so you can see this area here has been identified as the area to be reestablished. As generally they would be permitted that 26 feet 9 inches of shoreline activity area frontage. And so this area sort of right in here would be the only thing permitted to remain as activity space. Does that help to answer your question?
Well, thank you. It just appears that there's less vegetation on the shoreline. So that's a concern. And also I thought it was unclear to me, but we asked to come back for development of 10%, and I see it's 12.5. So I would really like to see it, if we can get it down some more. It's a very small property and a very large build, and I know they probably would like to have a generator, and and there might be a requirement for a retaining wall along the shoreline. I can't imagine they would want to leave their shore activity area looking like that. So it's just a question of retaining wall too. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Councillor Croy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in similar fashion to Councillor Godard, I actually have been on that lake a few times this year, and that property sticks out like a sore thumb. When you're out in the water, all you see is the property. You can see where all the trees have been cut down. It is very, very wide open. Now, they're pushing it back 20 meters or 10 meters or 12 meters, so that will help. But I know that we're asking for plantings in front, but it is all bald rock. I'm not sure what they're going to be able to get in there, but I agree that it has been clear-cutted. Now, over the years, I have no idea who did it, but certainly a replanting will be much appreciated along there. But I know that everything beyond that, on the other side of the house towards the road, is all flat. So the actual property is very, very flat, except very rocky out front. So I would be interested to know what they're going to plant there, because it is wide open. It would be very nice to see some vegetation planted in there.
Okay, did you want to comment, or No, I'll just move on. Yeah, I'll move on. Okay, so I see that I have Lanny Dennis joining us still is morning. Good morning, Lanny. How are you today?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Mayor, committee, Lanny Dennis, Wayne Simpson and Associates, 3-76 King William Street, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 1E4. Represent the owners in the application and Mr. Mark Furman, Love Grove Construction and Design. The designer and builder is also here this morning. Yeah, I think that's a fair and accurate assessment of the proposal as presented by the township planner, and certainly appreciate the efforts and assistance of staff bringing the application forward, and respectful of the comments that were made previously by committee. Concur with the planning department to approve the application. I think we've worked diligently over the last couple of months with certainly with the owners and the designer, the builder, and staff. As noted, the number of exceptions has been reduced from the 4 previously down to 3. The exception with respect to building size on a legal non-complying structure within 20 meters of the shoreline has been eliminated. Since most of the building is now outside the 20-meter setback, there's certainly a lot less built form closer to the water. The dwelling was pushed back to 56 feet from the existing setback of 33 feet, and the previous request at 41 feet, and certainly much further back than many of the other cottages along the similar shoreline as well in the immediate area. The is also made possible because they reduced the size of the cottage. Went from the previous proposal of 2,500 square feet down to 2,098 square feet. Reducing the building size allowed the septic area to be reduced, and therefore we're able to push the building back further. And certainly keeping in mind that this is an undersized, very shallow lot, so there's not a lot of room to work with. The maximum lot coverage was reduced from 13.9% down to 12.5%. And with respect to the additional lot coverage, and it was concluded by the planning department as well, that's offset by pushing the building back. Certainly the introduction and requirement for a planting plan, and limited the shoreline development consisting of only now a proposed 162 square foot dock, which is less than what was previously proposed at 200 square feet. But what I'm saying is there's not much shoreline development, if you will. The proposed building height was reduced from 27.9 feet, or 53.3% of the increase to the existing, to 22.6%, or 24.2% of the existing height. Reducing the height reduces the amount of built form, and along with the planting plan and pushing the building back, all assist in minimizing visual impact from the shoreline. The maximum cumulative width was reduced from 53 feet, 49.4% under the previous proposal, to 39.9%, which is 42.9 feet, as the width of the dwelling was reduced. This, along with reducing the size of the cottage and moving it further back and reducing the height, greatly assists in minimizing visual impact. A planting plan will be required and will assist, along with the other reductions in the request, with minimizing the visual and ecological impacts. Just to maybe answer a couple of questions before the conclusion, certainly for sure, the revegetation plan is a requirement, and if trees had previously grown in that area before, I'm sure replanting that area, they'll take again and will regrow. But a professional replanting plan will be required to ensure that vegetation grows, and that'll be dealt with through staff. So I think that was sort of the key in my mind in terms of the reestablishment of the vegetation along the shoreline, so that the owners and designer and builders are all on board, as am I, to reestablish the necessary vegetation, and certainly pushing the building further back. All of this with the additional rehabilitation of the shoreline. So in conclusion, with these reductions, I think the cumulative result is ensuring the amount of built form is appropriate for the site, and with the planting plan achieves a better balance between built form and the environment. Respectfully request committee approve the application. Thank you. Do you want to say something?
Thank you very much for that. Now, do you have some people with you there? I see somebody's hat poking around the corner at the camera. Did you wish to say any, does anybody want to say anything else, or are we good to go here to continue on? You're on mute.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. Mr. Mayor, can't see you. Mark Furman, Love Grove Construction, 91 West Road, Huntsville, Ontario. I believe that Emily, Lanny, and ourselves have done a fair bit of work on it. We're happy with the concessions of making it smaller, moving it back. All the things that Lanny said. You know, at one time they were talking about what if we just use the existing, expand it, do this and that. And I said, well, I'd be happier if you move it back and give us that buffer so that we can have that revegetation along the shoreline, which I think is going to give that building, as you said, Mr. Mayor, when you're on the lake, it sits out and it's 20 feet off the shore. So I concur with Emily and on Lanny on their statements, and I just want to put that in. That at one point they were talking about, well, we can go this much larger, this much higher, and I said, well, why don't you move it back and get that buffer away from the lake so we can revegetate properly. So there's my little hello for today. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. So I had I'm going to go back. I believe, I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks, I missed you. I think you had a question, did you?
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of a follow-up to one of our normal questions is in regards to lot coverage and why we try to maintain the 10%. But I understand with Lanny and this proposal, as you get into a smaller lot, percentages can kind of be a little bit misconstrued. So at first I had an issue with the 12.5, but I'm okay with that. What I see is a lot of things that seem to be riding on this planting plan, and I guess this is going back to staff. If a planting plan is to be submitted within 2 years, which is the typical wording, is that the plan submitted within 2 years, or a completion of the plan submitted within 2 years? Because if they have 2 years to submit a plan, then the work gets done. It could be like 4 years before you see tree. I'm just questioning, am I understanding that correctly?
Emily, do you want to take that one?
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the resolution that would state that they have, the planting plan needs to be submitted before the development permit can be issued. So they have 2 years to submit the planting plan, otherwise the resolution and the decision would lapse. So the development permit would not be issued without a planting plan submitted, and then they have usually a certain amount of time to plant. So plantings aren't necessarily required during construction when things, might not survive. If that helps to answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Emily. And on a sidebar from that, Emily, thank you very much for getting your pilot's license, because it's really good to see these drone shots now. So thank you again.
Okay, and I just want to mention that I don't know if the other people, Chloe or April here, or even Melissa, are going to get their license too. I don't know. So, you know, accolades all around, folks, for the pictures. Now we're going to go over to Councillor Goddard. You had your hand up, and I want to make sure you got your question about the retaining wall and anything else you'd like to say. Go ahead.
Yes, Lanny, will there be a retaining wall in that? And I would like to see the revegetating bigger, you know, more of the shoreline, because it is, in my opinion, from the water as well. There's nothing. Maybe there's one cedar tree, a couple little shrubs, but it's pretty bald. And also, will there be a generator? And if so, on such a small lot, I would recommend a buffer, a noise, some kind of a noise buffer. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there's 4 questions in there, Lanny or Mr. Furman, whoever wants to grab them there. Go ahead.
I think the first question was whether or not there's going to be a retaining wall. There is not. There's no retaining wall.
There'll be a grade slope.
Yeah. They're not contemplating a generator, so I think that answers another question.
But if I can speak on that, Manny, if we're doing a generator, it would be back on the roadside where not on the lake site. Typically, they're on the back where the road is, not up front, Councillor Goodall.
Okay, and then you had.
As far as the planting goes, we're following the rules of what the township has presently in place. There's 26 feet 9 inches of legitimate, if you want to call it that, width that would allow for access down to the shoreline. So everything else outside of that, 15 meters back, would require revegetation. So we're doing that. We have to do that. And I forget, was there a 4th question?
I don't think so. I think we're good with that. I'm going to just make sure Councillor LaCroix is okay with his discussion with regards to how bald it was. And he was the one, Mr. Furman, that suggested that it looked like it needed some growth from the lake. And I'm pretty sure you answered that, but did you want to make a comment, Councillor LaCroix? I mean, I got to just say you're well aware of our concern for the planting. I mean, I don't know how we can beat this up anymore. Councillor LaCroix, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you know, it's been repeated several times, but I know Emily has said that usually the planting plan goes in last because they don't want to destroy any vegetation, but this house is being pushed back quite a ways away from the water where all the vegetation will be put in. So I just wondered if Mark had thought about maybe putting in the mature trees or whatever is going to be asked of even before construction, because then you'll have a lot more room to be able to move in and do whatever you need to do out front before the construction of the building.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To get to that, when we take that building down, you've got 23 feet in front. So we're going to take the building down and move it back, and that will expose the spot for planting. But typically we have our mitigation fences for the water and stuff. So what we usually happens is we finish out our grading at the end of the job and do our planting. You know, and again, as Lanny has mentioned, 26, I believe it was, and I don't know if you've denoted species yet, but again, if you guys want to take an extra step and say, hey, we want to ensure some additional planting, and I'm not sure if Emily has specific trees. I know you typically have your so many square meters, need this. I don't think it'd be a problem at all if you asked us to submit. Well, we do have to submit that plan for the development permit. We have to get the development permit in place before we get our building permit. So if it was something that we wanted to augment and do a little bit more for Emily's review, that, hey, we added this. I know you say you want 5 trees, we're going to do this. I think Emily and Lanny, I'd be happy to sit down and go over that and ensure that that major concern is alleviated from this application, that yeah, we are going to put even some grasses and trees and get that area that is open right now closed in.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that reassurance. I have absolute faith in Emily, and you folks are are known to us well, and you do a great job. So let's get that. Emily's well aware, and she's writing planting plans. I see you wrote it 3 times with explanation. So everybody's going to be, yes, Councillor Goddard, very quickly.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Glover. I saw in the first plan that there's a room called the den/bedroom. And in this new revised plan, it says den, but I still see a closet. So is it going to be a den? Or it has potential for a bedroom. So I'm just concerned that it would go from a 4-bedroom with a den and turn into a 5th bedroom, but will the septic be able to handle that? And that would be a question for, I guess, Steve Watson. But what is it, a bedroom or a den? Thank you.
Do you want to give that a shot, guys, or? Your audio is not on. There you go.
Sorry, I hit the wrong buttons. When I was doing the design plans, I said we might want a future bedroom. So now I've gone back and said, guys, we have to move this building further to make sure council have that has to be a den. So set it and have it as an office, but it cannot be a bedroom. Now, when it comes to closets, everybody I designed for wants me to put a closet in every room because they want storage. But we've done several designs where it is a den, and you go back and they've got their office set up with their desk and computer, and they've got all their stationery in the closet. So that's what I've gone back and says, look, guys, we can't have a potentially future bedroom. It's got to be a den.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Okay, I am good. Is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this file? I'm getting no, so I'm going to go ahead and read from, moved by Councillor Tapley, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bay hereby receives a staff report, Development Permit Application DP 86-21 Lob Bailey, revised 1113 Menominee Lake Road, property roll number 040-017-04800, dated September 28, 2021. And whereas the applicant has submitted development permit application DP 86-21 Lob Bailey, revised in order to permit the demolition of an existing single-story dwelling and dock and the construction of a larger dwelling and dock. And whereas relief from the following sections of bylaw number 04-180 is required to permit the proposed construction. The bylaw requirement, section 5.1.1, maximum lot coverage is 10%. Existing is 8.25% to permit a maximum lot coverage of 12.5%. And section 5.1 maximum shoreline, 5.1.1 maximum shoreline activity area frontage 25% up to a maximum of 23 meters, 76 feet. Existing is 11.6 meters, 38 feet or 35.4 feet. And then the relief is to permit a maximum shoreline activity area frontage of 13.1 meters, 42.9 feet or 39.9%. And then section 4.39, expansion of a legal non-complying building or structure having a height increase of more than 15% of the existing building or structure. The existing is 5.5 meters, 18.2 feet. And then the relief applied for is to permit the reconstruction of a dwelling having a maximum height of 6.9 meters, 22.6 feet, being 24.2% greater than existing. Now be it resolved, the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bay provisionally approves this application pending the receipt and approval and to the satisfaction of the township of the following: a planting plan to reestablish a natural buffer between the shoreline and the proposed dwelling, as well as to bring the shoreline into greater conformity with the shoreline activity area provisions of the development permit bylaw, in addition to the area as shown on Schedule A and composed of native trees and shrubs. The required plan is to be submitted within 2 years of the date of this resolution as per section 2.25 of the bylaw 04-180, otherwise the provisional approval will lapse. Upon receipt and approval of the required, then the criteria as outlined in Schedule C of the development permit bylaw would thereby be fulfilled, and council would hereby approve the subject proposal in accordance with attached Schedule A, B, and C, subject to the following conditions: that the works be carried out in accordance with the plan submitted September 7th, 2021 and marked DP 86-21 Lob, that all lighting facilities shall be directed downwards and be required to minimize the impact on lake views, neighboring properties, night skies, and environmental features, that on a property adjacent to water, a shoreline buffer shall be maintained abutting any portion of a shoreline that does not form part of the shoreline activity area if it is identified on the attached schedule. A shoreline buffer shall be a minimum of 15 meters, 49.2 feet in depth, measured inland from the ordinary water's edge unless otherwise specified. All other provisions of Bylaw 04-180 must be complied with. If an activity area is not identified, all shoreline vegetation shall be maintained, and that all existing vegetation on the remainder of the lot as of the date of passing of this resolution outside of the building and septic envelopes be retained. Council, for the question, all those in favor? Opposed? And thank you very much. That's carried.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Take care.
gentlemen. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And thank you, Emily, for the report.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Next, I have, what do I have next? DP 20-21 LB applicants, Virginia Graham. And this is Emily again. Go ahead, Emily, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A variance application has been submitted for a water access only property located on the north side of Raven Lake. The owner of the property wishes to permit the construction of a 461 square foot uncovered and unenclosed expansion to an existing deck on the lake side of a legal non-complying dwelling, resulting in a shoreline yard setback less than what is permitted. The property has an area of approximately 0.86 acres and a shoreline frontage of 148 feet. It is well vegetated and slopes gradually throughout. As the subject lands are located on Raven Lake, the minimum required shoreline yard setback is 30 meters or 98.4 feet. The existing dwelling has a shoreline yard setback of approximately 79 feet, and the legal portion of the attached deck has a shoreline setback of approximately 72.2 feet. The proposed deck is irregular in shape and has a maximum width of approximately 20 feet and a length of 25 feet, resulting in a shoreline yard setback of 59.4 feet. This measurement has been confirmed by a survey completed by Tulloch Geomatics, Inc. That same survey also indicates that a very small portion of the deck is constructed on Crown land. Therefore, any approval should be provisional on approval from the MNRF. The proposed deck complies with all other provisions of the bylaw, including lot coverage, shoreline activity area frontage, and side yard setbacks. Section D10 of the official plan states that development will be designed to maintain, fit into, and use the natural characteristics and features of individual sites, and that built form should not dominate the landscape and visual impact should be minimized. Section D12 and D14 of the official plan state that new development will be set back a minimum of 20 meters from the normal high water mark of a lake, and where it is not possible to achieve that setback, a lesser setback may be considered, where there will be no negative visual or environmental impacts in the following situations. Where sufficient lot depth is not available on an existing lot to meet the setback requirements, where terrain or soil conditions exist which make other locations on an existing lot more suitable. In the case of a major addition, the setback is not further reduced, or where there is an established building line situated no closer than 10 meters from the shoreline. Furthermore, Section H18 of the official plan states that design principles should be implemented for development in the waterfront designation, including that the natural waterfront landscape shall prevail with built form blending into that landscape and existing shoreline vegetation, and building mass and coverage should be limited in relation to the size and frontage of the property and in character with the surrounding area. It's staff's opinion that the proposed encroachment towards the shoreline does not comply with the intent of these sections of the official plan or the intent, principles, and policies of the for shoreline residential development laid out in the development permit bylaw. Built form is proposed closer to the shoreline than the existing building line and beyond the minimum 20 meters or 65.6 foot shoreline setback. It is staff's opinion that the proposal would not be appropriate for the development of the lands and does not represent good planning. Staff recommend the application as presented be denied. A letter of support has been received from a neighboring landowner to the west. And I apologize that there are not more photos. It is a water access only property, so it was difficult to obtain them. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much for that. Questions, council, for Ms. Thaler? Okay, or perhaps I should ask one here. Emily, you showed a photo, or I saw a photo there of where it was encroaching on the setback. Can you go to that drawing?
A photo?
It was a drawing, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Shouldn't use the word photo. It looked like the deck was just over.
Hold on just a second.
That
sorry.
one.
Through me, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this survey was provided by Tulloch Engineering, and so the setbacks are considered to be accurate. And so the shoreline area is not even, it's not owned by the township, but it is Crown land. So there is a small encroachment.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, council? I can see Councilor LaCroix. It's the only one I can see, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondered, did staff and the opponent have any discussions of making the deck smaller? I thought maybe if it was outside of the road shore allowance, even though we don't own it, it might have got more consideration. I know it's moving closer to the water, but it is still quite far away. So I just wonder if there was any discussion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the deck has already been constructed. It was a discovery by the building department. And so they're coming in now for approval of what was constructed.
Ooh. Okay, we'll just let that sink in for a second. Any other questions, council? Councilor Tapley, go ahead. It's that little
Sorry,
one.
my mute's getting away from me. Emily, through you, Mr. Mayor, if the deck was not built, if it was pulled back outside the Crown land, would it be considered?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's a little tricky to speculate depending on, you know, how much farther it was pulled back and what would be considered reasonable. It's not just the infringement on the Crown land, it's the fact that it's coming quite a bit closer to the shoreline than the required 30-meter setback for that lake. I can't really speculate on a hypothetical proposal, but of course everything would be considered differently.
Okay, any further questions, council? Councilor Anderson.
Thanks, Mayor Glover. Emily, me and my setbacks again, I'm trying to figure this out. Isn't the actually required setback on Raven 30 meters back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is. It's 30 meters. I think there might have been a little confusion when I was quoting from a section of the official plan, which section D14, which sort of stated some following situations where setbacks could be considered, and 20 meters was, or sorry, no closer than 10 meters, and then there was a 20-meter minimum. So but it didn't take into account sort of the lake that it's on. It was sort of a general OP provision.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go, we have no further questions for Emily at this time. I'm going to go to our guests here, and on my monitor it says Virginia Brown, on my sheet it says Virginia Graham, but I'll go with either one. And I guess you're joined there for Virginia by someone. So if you could introduce yourselves, give us your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and state your case.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Virginia Brown. I just happened to get married for the third time since the cottage was bought. I'm here with my husband, Scott Brown. We live at 80 Western Battery Road, Unit 2409 in Toronto, M6K3S1.
Okay, and go ahead whenever you're ready. I can't hear you at all.
I'm sorry, I'll get closer. I'll speak louder.
That's good, yep.
Okay, sorry. You know, this is a seasonal cottage with boat access, and it's very difficult to get work performed. And I we take responsibility for going ahead. The opportunity presented itself to have people help us move the material over, and it was an oversight on our part, absolutely. And ever since the build was noticed, we've been doing everything to make it compliant. The construction is not completed because we stopped once we realized we were offside. And so we are able to make some concessions to that slight overance where it is in the crown area. And I would also like to point out that because of the elevation change here, our outside space is dramatically limited because the front property slopes away, and it's well treed and it's well back from the water, and really the visual impact from the lakeside is not a problem. And you've noticed that we did receive a favorable comment from a neighbor. So I really, we apologize for doing this backwards, but we're doing everything we can to make it right, and we really would appreciate greatly that you let us proceed with this.
Okay, questions, council, for the Browns? Who'd like to start? Go ahead, Councillor Goddard, then Councillor LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. How long have you been on Raven Lake, Virginia?
99.
So have you done any additions or to your property renovations that would require a building permit?
No.
At all in the
No.
past? So this is the first?
Yes.
So the gazebo was there, and
yes.
Yes. Well, this is a case of putting the cart before the horse, and there is knowledge out there. It's on our website, how to proceed with these kind of additions and that. And I'm just surprised that this has happened. I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor LaCroix, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my first question would be, how far along is the deck, and can you, obviously, you said you can push it back, but how far would you push it back? And then just a comment is that I know that you started beforehand, but to me, a walkout deck like this would be much preferred than a patio with a large retaining wall. So if he had come certainly beforehand, certainly would have a better case, but just wondered how much you can reduce it, and how far have you actually gotten?
Most of the structure is there. It's finishing stages that need to be completed. So the deck is on, and it would be a matter of removing deck boards and cutting back the front edge of the existing deck.
Okay, I'm going to continue on. Councillor Tapley, go ahead.
Has the building department looked at this for construction? Does it meet code?
Yes, we've hired a structural engineer to design the deck, and the building department has those drawings.
Okay, and Councillor, are you? Oh, hello, Mr. Watson. How are you today?
Good, and yourself, Mr. Mayor?
Very good. Did you want to make a comment? Go ahead, we're welcoming you.
Yes, the building department does not conduct any reviews of any building that has been constructed without a building permit. So we cannot comment whether the building actually meets building code.
Okay, there's your answer. I forget who asked it, but Councillor Tapley. Yeah, good question. Okay, so.
But could I just reiterate that we did hire a structural engineer to do the design, and it's a stamped drawing by an engineer.
Yeah, unfortunately, sir, that's, I believe you that you did all that, but then again, our building people have to have.
No, and I appreciate that. And the intent would be to, when it's completed, have them come and inspect it to see that it complies with the design as drawn.
Right, and I'm sure they will. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Brooks? No, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, very quickly. I will not comment on the building permit issue, but in looking at the design sketch, of the plan, or elevation, I should say, it looks to me like the floor joists are all going in the direction of the cottage to the lake. And there is a significant overhang from the beams. I would think it would be quite easy to cut the deck back without even affecting the structure. So in response to Councillor LaCroix's question, how far could you take it back? I guess I looked at the site plan and question where that 18.1 was taken from. Was it taken from the edge of the deck, or was it taken from the structure? Because the structure is what's important here, not the edge of the railing of the deck, which is above grade. But it's all semantics because there is no permit, so it needs to get resolved before we can actually, I think, before we can actually address this issue.
Okay, so here's the way I'm gonna look at this, and I'm looking to council for approval on this. But clearly, to the Browns, we're looking to try and find a way to mitigate this and help you out. So moving forward, I want to ask staff, are we able to work out an arrangement now, or would we be best to defer this with them to come back plans and get everybody out there to have a look? I don't know if we know exactly what the measurement is, so a deferral, or what would we find most comforting to move this ahead? Because we can't just go say, well, we're going to take a board out and then that's going to be good. That won't fly. How would we best deal with this? Or should I just say, as council, do you want to go to a deferral to get a better drawing and a better plan and move forward? I'm seeing some nods there and some hands up. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. There's another party, and that is the Crown. So it would have to be part of this whole thing too. So I'm thinking that a deferral may be the way to go.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting a sense of. Council, if I could see, give me a thumbs up if you're thinking a deferral on this, and then if I'm going to count the thumbs, oh, I'm seeing lots of thumbs. So that is probably the best direction to go at this point. I'm saying this to the Browns, you get a deferral and we work out the little problems we have to get this deck built as big as you possibly can have it, still within the guidelines of what council's looking for. With regard to just denying it, is that can happen, but it sounds like you're willing to work. Does that sound like something you're willing to work with staff on?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. So is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this? No, seeing no one. Okay, so then I'm going to read.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead,
about
sure.
the deferral and the timing, because with it being water access only, and us only being up there 5 months a year, our plan was to close the cottage down this weekend because of the water line freezing potential, and we don't plan to be back up there really until May. Our boats are scheduled to be pulled out this weekend, and so I just want to talk about timing on how we work through that.
Okay, so I'm going to go to staff and timing on this deferral. Is there a time limit, or we'll just defer it to whenever? I'm going to look at our planner because she looks like she can't wait to answer this. Go ahead, Melissa, Director of Planning.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point on deferrals, there is no time limitation. There was no time limitation that was put on this by any of council that I heard here today. So there's no timing put on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else anyone wishes to say? Then I'm going to go ahead and read it. Go ahead. No? Yes?
Just as Mr. Watson is not here in the room with me, I'm just not certain if there would be timelines from Mr. Watson that maybe he could speak to, and maybe that would be more of a dictating timelines than
Look
planning.
look at that. He popped right on the screen. Mr. Watson, is there any time limitations on this that we need to be concerned with because the folks are wanting to close their cottage off?
I do have a 1-year limitation in which to enforce the Building Code Act from the date of discovery. I'd have to check the records. I can't recall when we actually found this issue, but if it was sometime in the summer, then this gives them plenty of time to go through the planning process. Even if they get approval through planning in the winter and we deny the building permit because it doesn't meet planning, say today or tomorrow, that puts that portion on hold until such time as planning completes their process. So Long as it's less than a year, then we'd be fine.
Okay, I can see some concern. I'm going to go back to the Browns. You got to turn your audio on though. So yep,
Yeah, we're
there.
here.
Go ahead. Do you have any questions or concerns around that?
We do, because I'm not sure what will be required in terms of getting up there to the site in order to get the revisions. I don't know if it can all be done remotely or not, and we're just unable to get there in the winter.
Can't get there.
Okay, so
Mr. Mayor, if I can only just state, so it doesn't stop you from dealing with staff in order to determine a decreased setback or a decreased size of the deck. You don't need to be at the property for that.
Okay.
So why we're here today is to actually look at an approval, regardless of what it is you're proposing. It will be located within the shoreline yard, and there would be planning approval required. So there would not be through the building process, that's different, but we would need to take a look and see what that 1 year, since it was found, and we'd have to work back from that. But from planning, you don't need to be out there to fix the issue or reduce it on the ground. You would just need planning approval to move forward with your building permit, and then perhaps you can then continue to work with the building department. But unfortunately, I don't have the date when it was discovered, so I'm not sure what the timeline is that we're working with. But like I said, you do not need to be up at your property in order to continue to work with planning to bring this forward.
okay, your audio is off. Yep. Brown's it's off again. There, it's on.
So we have worked with planning, or not planning, the building department in terms of the timeline. And we're asked to provide a letter from our lawyer saying that because we're coming up on the 1 year mark, that if we are not allowed to proceed, that we will remove the structure. So we have a kind of an agreement in place that resolves the timeline.
Okay, did that sound like we're moving ahead here? I'm a little confused now, but if I could get Mr. Watson to come back on just for a second, Mr. Watson. Okay, so we're just trying to determine they want to fix it, but they're facing winter. They're closing this weekend, and I understand, first off, to the Browns, you're going to deal with planning, and planning is going to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We all agree to this. Then they're concerned with how quickly they have to do that to fit into code without us coming and saying, you got to take the whole thing down, start again, or whatever you got to do there. So we won't know that till you discover exactly when this was discovered. Is that correct?
We're coming up to a year in October, I believe. And that's why we provided the letter, a legal letter from our lawyer saying that if we fail in this attempt, then we'll remediate. So the year is really coming up shortly.
Okay, so then I go to Mr. Watson. What can we do next to help them out? Or is there something that you can say that's going to move us along?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the catch-22 when it takes so long to get the stuff into the planning realm. Their timelines are different than the building code. Perhaps what I would do then is issue an order to comply onto the property, to which that order would be a 1 year process from the day we issue the order. If my 1 year lapses from the date that we discovered it, I cannot charge them for building without a permit, but I could charge them if they don't comply with an order. So that is a second option. So if a letter from a lawyer does not satisfy the Building Code Act, unfortunately, they cannot override my timeline limitations. So, but we could issue an order to comply under the property because an order has not been issued on the property, only notice of violation. And that would give us an additional year. This is something I've been looking at on how we can deal with these long planning applications that do seem to take some time to get through the planning realm, and how we can deal with it through building code.
Okay, so then now we're looking at another year. Okay, so that should suffice, I would think, to the Browns. Does that sound like something we could work with? Okay, so then I don't need to put anything extra in here. We're good to go. Okay, I'm getting the nod. Councillor Brooks, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a very quick one. to alleviate the, to address the planning issue, I guess my question to staff would be to clarify from the consultant that created this, the setbacks, the 18.1, just to clarify, where did they take the 18.1 to? If they took it to the deck, do they take it to the railing? Do they take it to the posts? If they took it wherever they took it from, then that tells us how much that the deck needs to be moved back to get behind that imaginary line.
Okay, does that help?
Through you, Ms. Mayor, we can do that for sure.
Okay, and then I go ahead, Mr. Watson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to clarify something. When we're measuring setbacks to a deck, it's measured to the leading edge of the deck, not the posts that are supporting the deck. It is measured to the leading edge of the deck. So that's where the setback has to come from. Or else we'll have good engineers that can design a deck to cantilever 22 feet.
Okay. Okay. So I think, are we clear?
So I think knowing the structure, there won't be an issue cutting that leading edge back because it was measured to the leading edge, and because of the cantilever, we'll definitely be able to cut that leading edge back and get on the right side of that line.
Okay, wonderful. I'm thrilled to hear you're going to work with staff on this and we can just mitigate the problem. And of course, I'm going to leave that with our wonderful staff here. And I'm going to read this out, Council, and it's for the deferral, and we can carry on down the path. So moved by Councillor Croy, seconded by Councillor Godard. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township Lake of Bays hereby receives a staff report, development permit application DP 20-21 LOB Graham, 100 Raven Lake, property roll number 03000305000, dated September 28, 2021. And whereas the applicant has submitted development permit application DP 20-21 LOB Graham in order to permit the construction of a deck addition. And whereas relief from the following sections of bylaw number 04-180 is required to permit the proposed construction. Section 5.1.1, minimum shoreline yard setback 30 meters, 98.4 feet. Existing is 24.2 meters, 79.4 feet. And then relief applied for to permit a minimum shoreline yard setback of 18.1 meters, 59.4 feet to an uncovered and unenclosed deck attached to a dwelling. Now be it resolved that development permit application DP 2021 LOB Graham be deferred to allow the applicant to revise their plans to reduce the size of the proposed deck and increase the shoreline yard setback. Council, for the question. All those in favor? And that is indeed carried. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Browns for joining us, and let's get this sorted out. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye. Next up, I have DP 8421 LOB applicants David and Shelley O'Connor. And I'm looking over here, and that is indeed Emily again. Go ahead, Emily, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's going to be just a little bit long, so I apologize in advance. Am I sharing my screen? I'm not sharing my screen yet. Sorry about that. A variance application has been submitted for a waterfront property located at 1025 Unit 1 Grassmere Point Road at the northern end of Peninsula Lake. The owner requests approval of this application in order to facilitate the construction of a 362 square foot deck attached to an existing legal non-compliant dwelling and to permit a 56 square foot addition to a dock. The property has an area of approximately 0.34 acres and a shoreline frontage of 124 feet. Overall, it is well vegetated with mature trees and contains a very steep slope immediately behind and in front of the dwelling. The shoreline area behind and to the east of the boathouse is level and cleared. In 2014, the owners applied to construct a 362 square foot addition to the dwelling on the west side, the same size and location of the now proposed open and unenclosed deck. At that time, township staff approved the application by way of a Category 1 staff development permit. In 2017, the owners applied for a Category 1 staff variance for an open and unenclosed 230 square foot deck on the east side of the dwelling, and were granted a development permit for the structure at a reduced shoreline yard setback, as well as a reduced side yard setback. At the time that the second development permit was issued in 2017, the addition, which had previously been approved in 2014, had not been constructed and was not included in the site plan submitted with the application. Therefore, neither the 2017 development permit nor the attached schedule took the approval, though unconstructed addition, took the approved but unconstructed addition into account. In 2021, the owners of the property applied for a building permit to construct the addition, which had been approved in 2014. The building department advised that the addition was not included in the most recent development permit, and therefore planning approval would be required. During the consultation process, the owners requested that the proposed addition be amended to be an open and unenclosed deck of the same square footage. A review of the proposal by planning staff identified 4 required variances from the development permit bylaw. Sorry. The first variance required is for maximum allowable lot coverage. The subject lands have an area of approximately 0.34 acres, as previously stated. The property was originally created by plan of subdivision in 1915, along with 28 other parcels, the majority of them similar in depth and frontage. The properties immediately surrounding the subject lands continue to have similar shoreline frontages, but have all generally doubled in size due to lot additions to the rear. A small lot addition of 0.05 acres was provided to the subject lands in 2005, but the property remains undersized for the immediate area. The property has an existing lot coverage of 13.3%. This includes the dwelling, attached deck, boathouse, and legal portion of the dock. It's staff's understanding that previously the lot coverage calculations in 2014 and 2017 for this property had been completed using data from a survey which formed an incomplete picture. It has since been determined that the area of the boathouse and dock depicted on the survey only represented the on-land portion of the structure and did not include several hundred square feet of it, which extended out over the water. The proposed deck and dock additions would result in an increase in lot coverage to 15.8%, where 10% is the maximum permitted. No shore road allowance was established for this property, and therefore there is no ability for the proposed lot coverage to be further reduced. The second variance required is for the minimum shoreline yard setback to the proposed open and unenclosed deck. The subject lands are located on Peninsula Lake and have frontage zoned as waterfront environmental protection. Therefore, the minimum required shoreline yard setback is 30 meters. The existing legal non-complying dwelling is located at a shoreline setback of 54 feet, and the proposed deck would be oriented so that it would not encroach any closer to the shoreline than the existing setback. The third variance required is for an increase in allowable shoreline activity area frontage. The property has a shoreline length of 124 feet, and therefore an allowable shoreline activity area frontage of 25%, being 31 feet. The development permit bylaw states that all existing legal non-complying dwellings and sleeping cabins within the shoreline yard are to be included in shoreline activity area frontage, and subsequently any additions to those structures would be included as well. The existing dwelling has a shoreline setback of 54 feet at the closest point, as previously stated, and the proposed deck would maintain that setback, resulting in a shoreline activity area frontage of approximately 56 feet or 45.2%. The final variance for the applicants are seeking is for maximum shoreline activity area coverage. The existing legal dock and boathouse structure results in a total shoreline activity area coverage of 38.6%. Prior to 2017, the aging dock was rebuilt. During the reconstruction, a portion of the east side was widened from approximately 4 feet to 6 feet, and the nearshore portion of the same side was widened from approximately 5 feet to 10 feet, resulting in a total additional coverage of 56 square feet without a building or development permit. The additional dock space results in an overall shoreline activity area coverage of 849 square feet, or 41.4%, where 40% is generally permitted. Additionally, section 5.3.2 of the development permit bylaw permits expansions to existing docks located in WEP1 zoned areas where the proposed addition would not increase the width of the structure. The same section permits new dock structures as a discretionary use, provided that a fish habitat impact assessment demonstrates to the satisfaction of the township that there would be no negative impacts to the features and functions of the area. Therefore, to address an increase in width of the shoreline structure during reconstruction, staff recommend that provisional approval of the application include a condition that a scoped fish habitat impact assessment be provided to staff satisfaction that demonstrates the lack of negative impact. To mitigate the additional shoreline activity area frontage and coverage, staff recommend that a portion of the shoreline be allowed to revegetate naturally to bring the shoreline activity area closer into conformity with the official plan and development permit bylaw intent, principles, and policies. In addition, the applicants have proposed to remove a shoreline shed structure, and staff would recommend that that area be allowed to revegetate naturally as well to mitigate the additional frontage. It's staff's opinion that the proposed development is in keeping with the size and frontage of the property and meets the intent, design, principles, and policies of the official plan and is in character with the surrounding area. The application generally conforms to the township official plan and is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement. Therefore, staff have no concerns with the approval of this application, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. A letter of support was received yesterday from a neighboring landowner to the west. I'll read it here just in case you didn't receive the update on the agenda. We are owners of the property known as 1021 Grassmere Point Road. Our property is the second parcel west of the O'Connor site, and we support the application by David and Shelley O'Connor for development permit approval as stated in their application noted. It is our opinion that their application will not affect our or adjacent properties, and we support them wholeheartedly. Respectfully, Carl and Margot Janzuzak. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Emily, for the report. Appreciate that very much. Council, questions for Emily? Councillor Papard.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Emily, how complicated would it be for us to say no to this deck, which is on the footprint of a previous application to do an expansion, which was approved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's
That's quite a question.
I might have to ask Melissa to take that question.
Okay, Melissa, that's going to go to you then.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point, we're looking at an application that in their application to staff in 2017, it wasn't included on the drawings. So at that point, we could treat the 2017 application as what it is, and that's the only existing development permitted on the property. I'm not certain exactly how the 2014 staff variation was included, but people do change their minds in terms of what they want to do for development. So it could have been just in 2017 that it was viewed that that addition wasn't proceeding and that there'd be a deck on the other side. But without any of that background information, staff can't comment on that. What we're looking at today is just moving forward with that deck addition that they have proposed in front of you. And that's truly what we look at, is every application on its own merits. But yes, there is that background to go along with this one that does add a different component to this application.
Thank you. It's just, in my opinion, it's a little, the deck's a bit large. I think it could be shrunk down. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, Council, for Emily? Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Emily, if I understand correctly, in 2017, they tore the old dock apart and rebuilt it, and it's substantially increased it, but without any permits. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. I have to double check. Perhaps the owner is here as well to speak to the actual year that it was done and all that, but that's generally my understanding.
Okay, before we do that.
Okay, so if.
Go ahead, Councillor Brooks. We're going to take questions just for Emily.
Sorry, Yep, yeah, exactly. So then without a permit from the building department and also without a permit from MNRF. So when you're asking for a fish habitat study now, a scoped fish habitat study now, when the dock was built 4 years ago, isn't this like closing the barn door after the horse is gone? We're worried about the quality of life for the aquatic life in something that was already disturbed 4 years ago. It should have been done at that point in time, which further mitigates why this is a situation where we're kind of we're we're trying to, I guess, it's easier to get forgiveness than approval. That's kind of what I'm hearing. So not a happy camper about that one. Carry on.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. Any other questions for Emily at this point, folks? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. Emily, what scoped fish habitat impact assessment? What's scope mean? Like I don't understand that terminology. Is that a full fish habitat study, or can you? Is that what it is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The terminology was used just because there's different levels of fish habitat assessments that you can request, right? You can shoreline to shoreline versus specific to, a very small area. This being just the direct area of the dock and boathouse versus fish habitat assessment, which would request, where is the best place to put one on this whole lot sort of thing. So that's just terminology used to be very specific. It's a small lot, so maybe it wasn't required, but.
So my understanding then is that a fish habitat study will happen if we do a provisional approval.
Correct. That being because if it hadn't been constructed, it would be required in order to permit it. So it is a bit putting the cart before the horse, but it's what we have, the tools that we have.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Tapley, then Councillor Peppard. Councillor Tapley.
Emily, through you, Mr. Mayor. Peninsula Lake had a blue bean algae bloom last year. Where was that bloom? Because this is a very, I don't know, this is a very small, shallow bay. Where was that bloom? Do you know?
I couldn't speak to that, unfortunately. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Perhaps, no, I'm seeing a no from Councillor Peppard too, so I was thinking he might know where that bloom was. But anyway, let's leave that for now. Councillor Peppard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Emily, the fish habitat study, would that be in, on the ground one, or are we talking a desktop analysis? Just because, the dock was built already.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our preference obviously would be on the ground, but I guess it would be up to the assessment consultants to what they deem to be required for the situation. I couldn't answer that at this time, but we could specify if that would satisfy that it be on the ground.
I think specifying would be helpful.
Okay, so we've got one for that, two for that. Any other questions, Council, at this point for Emily? Councillor Godard? No? Yes? No? Okay, it's a no. Okay, anything else? Okay, then I'm going to go to Mr. O'Connor. Welcome, sir. Good morning. And is it still? No, good afternoon. And can you give me your name and address for the record prior to engaging us with your story? Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Good. Thank you. The address of the cottage, our cottage is at 1025 1 Grassmere Point Road. My name is David O'Connor, and thank you for hearing our application. We appreciate it. The boathouse, we only extended a couple feet, being because we had to reconstruct it because the boards had all gone. In order for it to sit properly, we added that little couple of feet, not intentionally to be in violation of any bylaws or anything like that. So we've been there since 98. We're the only cottage left basically out there. So we really go up there and just enjoy the cottage, and we don't, everybody around us have rebuilt all these pretty big places. So our cottage is very small, and we like it. And we maintain it. If you look at our shoreline compared to other people's shoreline, you'll see that it's really grown in very nicely. We're nature lovers, and we have no intention of changing that. And of course, when we moved that little hut there, that was a playhouse that our neighbor gave us for the kids when they grew up to swing from and stuff like that. So, but we'll let that all grow in. That's what we want anyway. We want the whole place to be wild, so that there's no problem there. And like I said, we had full intention of building on the other side, but we also wanted to build on the other side for another reason, and then go back to the other permit. But we didn't realize, or we didn't even know, that we wouldn't be able to build on the second permit. So that's where that confusion was. So but we're hoping that we can move forward.
Okay, council, questions for Mr. O'Connor? Not seeing any. Is there anyone in the public wishes to speak to this? No. Okay, before I read this, I'm going to go back to Mr. Papard. Did you want to stipulate something about a fish study, sir? Or it's in there already? Okay, so I think they've already included it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this then, Council. Moved by Councillor Tapley, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters, the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays hereby receives a staff report, Development Permit Application DP 8421 LOB O'Connor, 1025-1 Grassmere Point Road, property roll number 02000203600, dated September 28, 2021. And whereas the applicants have submitted development permit application DP 8421 LOB O'Connor in order to permit the construction of an open and unenclosed deck and in addition to an existing dock. And whereas relief from the following sections of bylaw number 04-180 is required to permit the proposed construction. Section 5.1.1 maximum lot coverage of 10%, existing is 13.3%, and the relief applied for is to permit a maximum lot coverage of 15.8%. And then the bylaw requirements, section 5.1.1, minimum shoreline yard setback 30 meters, 98.4 feet. Existing is 16.5 meters, 54 feet to a legal non-complying dwelling. And then to permit a minimum shoreline yard setback of 16.5 meters, 54 feet to an open and unenclosed deck. And then bylaw requirements, section 5.1.1 L, I guess it is, maximum shoreline activity area coverage is 40%. Existing is 38.6, legal boathouse structure, and then a relief applied for to maximum shoreline activity area coverage of 78.9 square meters, 849 square feet, or 41.4%. Section 5.1.1, maximum shoreline activity area frontage 25%, existing 9.1 meters, 30 feet, and to permit a maximum shoreline activity area frontage of 17 meters, 56 feet, or 45.2%. Now, be it resolved that the Council Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake of Bays provisionally approves this application pending the receipt and approval of the satisfaction of the Township of the following: a scoped fish habitat impact assessment, which demonstrates to the satisfaction of the Township that there would be no negative impacts to the features and functions of the area resulting from the dock addition. The required assessment be submitted within 2 years from the date of this resolution as per section 2.25 of bylaw 04-180. Otherwise, this provisional approval will lapse. Upon receipt and approval of the required, then the criteria as outlined in Schedule C of the development permit bylaw would thereby be fulfilled, and council would hereby approve the subject proposal in accordance with attached Schedule A and B, subject to the following conditions: that the works be carried out in accordance with the plan submitted June 16, 2021 and marked DP 84-21 LOB, that all lighting facilities shall be directed downwards and be required to minimize the impact on lake views, neighboring properties, night skies, and environmental features. That on a property adjacent to water, a shoreline buffer shall be maintained abutting any portion of the shoreline that does not form part of the shoreline activity area, if it is identified on the attached schedule. A shoreline buffer shall be a minimum of 15 meters, 49.2 feet, in depth, measured inland from the ordinary water's edge unless otherwise specified. All other provisions of bylaw 04-180 must be complied with. If an activity area is not identified, all shoreline vegetation shall be maintained. That a portion of the existing cleared shoreline shall be allowed to revegetate to establish a portion of the shoreline buffer, and that all existing vegetation in the remainder of the lot as of the date of passing of this resolution outside the building envelope be retained. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. You have yourself a wonderful...
One question, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
How do you propose to get the fish habitat? Like, how do I do that? We don't know any of that stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Emily. Go ahead.
Emily, how do we do that?
Yeah, we can follow up after this meeting for sure.
Okay, I'll just email you after. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. You have yourself a good day.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. I've got F. I've only got a couple left, council, and I think we can drag on, I think, just to get through this. It'd be the best for me, I think. F03-21 LB applicants, Bay Street Boys, and this Councillor LaCroix has off. Okay. And this is, who's got this one?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can try and just contact or just comment on it. Typically, we have these in the consent agenda, but this is a development application that had come forward previously. All this is to deem the 2 lots on a plan of subdivision not to be on a plan of subdivision any longer. So this is just a condition of a consent application to move forward with the development.
Questions, council? Are we good with that? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So I've got moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Brooks, being a bylaw to deem lot 1 and 2 on Plan 2, McLean, not to be a lot on a registered plan of subdivision, Bay Street Boys, F03-21 LB, roll number 040-009-04100-1 Bay Street, be read a third time in number 2021-096, and that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, seal with the seal of corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Council, for that bylaw, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Councillor LaCroix, you can come back. And finally, I have an other. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Not sure I like that. Welcome to the meeting. So all I'm going to talk to you about today is the CPP bylaw that the town of Huntsville is moving forward with. So staff had told council that we would inform you when things were moving forward. So the last report that I brought forward were directions and background reports that the town of Huntsville had done at the beginning of this year. I just wanted to inform you that the town of Huntsville went forward to their planning committee, I believe in September, and they had were seeking permission to move forward with the draft bylaw to release to the public for comments and meetings. So at this point, I believe Huntsville is moving forward with public consultation through October, and essentially it's just to let council know and also to get the authorization for staff to participate in those meetings and to review the bylaw and provide comments back to the town of Huntsville.
Questions, council? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you very much for that. And I've got something to read somewhere. Here we go. This is a, right, let's receive it. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Godard. Whereas the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays receives the staff report, Town of Huntsville Community Planning Permit Bylaw Review, Public Engagement dated September 28, 2021. Be resolved, the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays receives the report and directs staff to review the Town of Huntsville CPP bylaw and provide comments during the town public engagement sessions. Council, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Brooks, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting of council for planning matters held on September 28, 2021, be read a third time in number 2021-099, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, seal with the seal of corporation, be engrossed in the bylaw book. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Godard. Be it resolved, the Council for Planning Matters of the Corporation of the Township of Lake Bays adjourns the meeting on September 28, 2021 at 12:41 p.m. to meet again on October 12, 2021 at 9 a.m. in compliance with provincial orders, electronic in-person meetings. Council, for the vote, all those in favor? Thank you. And I want to thank everyone today for joining us, certainly the staff for all that you've done. I want to thank council and our viewing public. Thank you so much for joining in. I wish everyone well, stay well, take care of each other, and have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you very much. Bye for now.